Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto abuses the shadow clone training method part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Who the fuck trashed my room? That was my first thought as I woke up and looked around. My second was, why did my head hurt so damn bad? I put a hand to my head and rubbed my temples for a few moments before my headache started to fade, which was my first clue that something wasn't quite right. The clincher to that fact was when my eyes snapped open and I realized that this shithole wasn't, in fact, my room. Except I knew that it was actually my room and that the villagers were responsible for its abysmal shape. I marveled over my new, commonly used, vocabulary and marveled over the fact that I was marveling over using such a common term. I got up and my head didn't rise very far from where it had been when I was sitting on not my, bed. Despite being so much shorter, the same height, as I was used to, I moved relatively gracefully. I walked into the bathroom and looked at, not my reflection in the mirror. I was short, waiting for my growth spurt to bail, had spiky, golden blonde hair under a stupid, cool, sleeping hat, had cerulean, blue eyes, chubby cheeks, and 3 scar-like birthmarks on each cheek. Holy shit. I'm Naruto, the future Hokage Databayo. That can't be right, I'm not, so, Uzumaki Naruto. However, I know that I'm not Naruto. I mean, I can remember my entire life. I went to school, the academy, and graduated in 1-3 tries at the bottom of my class. I have never had a girlfriend, well, several, but hadn't found the right one for me. I had no parents and no siblings. I had no family. I lived in the normal world where Naruto was an anime protagonist, which I found to be really, really awesome all of a sudden. As I stared into my reflection's blue orbs, I decided to try and be logical about this whole thing. Apparently I was in Naruto's body. From what I could tell, I had all of his memories about his upbringing, training, and all of the people I knew. But more important was that I also somehow instinctually knew that I could use all of his awesome skills. That included his awful, not great chakra control, his stupidly large chakra reserves, his unrelenting energy, and his fuzzball of a tenant. That was good. If I had to be in this world, a world where people could destroy forests, create worldwide illusions, steal hearts to extend their life, and on, being the main character, who was also a hideous waste, untapped treasure trove of potential, wasn't that bad of an option. Assuming, of course, that I wasn't hallucinating or in a coma somewhere, then I was actually in the world of Naruto, and being someone who had stupid chakra levels, a surprising amount of talent, more guts than just about anyone ever, and always won in the end, was a good thing. Obviously I would rather be someone like Sasuke, Team, Kabuto, or Madara, but Naruto would do, was awesome. Though what had to be the absolute best part of the situation? Last night was the night Naruto, I stole the scroll from Mizuki's fake graduation exam. Meaning that I knew a jutsu that given enough time would arguably be more hacks than the cheating in itself. Yes, I knew the Kagebunshin no jutsu, and I had 2 weeks to abuse the hell out of it to catch myself up to my peers before squads were assigned. So, what was I going to do with the several hundred clones this awesome technique provided? Start training nature transformations? Learn awesome new ninjutsu? Nope. I was going to master the basics. That meant sending a few hundred clones to both of Konoha's libraries, the civilian one and the shinobi one, and having them read everything a potential genin is allowed to in order to increase my knowledge of this world and not be a dope. I also really needed a bingo book, as that would help explain away some of my future knowledge. While that happens, another few hundred of my clones will start the tree climbing exercise, and then alternating between the leaf sticking and spinning exercise and practicing hand seals while doing the tree climbing for added control benefits, as it seems that having my admittedly superior intellect in Naruto's body seems to have increased my chakra capacity, and its potency even more. Finally, a few other clones will be hinging into random other people, buying me food that has proper nutrition, so I don't have to be a chibi, wait for my growth spurt, for a few years. Kurama's chakra and the Uzumaki vitality should sort out my vertical problem shortly once I provide my body with the needed nutrients, and correcting my wardrobe. I seem to have inherited Naruto's love of the color orange, but I know that orange is not a suitable color for a genin. Maybe I'll incorporate it into my outfit when I'm a jonin, maybe. While my clones are doing that, I will be hunting down a certain spandex-wearing freak in order to exercise my inner masochist, learn taijutsu. Hopefully Guy will take pity and accept me as a student and provide me with weights to wear as I train. I chose Mato Guy not only for his talent in taijutsu, and his talent in teaching said taijutsu to a handicapped shinobi like Rock Lee, but also for his crazy dedication to physical fitness. If a virtually normal person like Rock Lee can be trained into such a beast, then with my new body's crazy vitality and recovery speed in addition to Kurama's chakra healing all of my injuries in minutes, making breaking bones a non-issue, because bones don't actually get stronger when they break, and tearing muscles would only help as they do get stronger after being broken down. Which happens to make me a perfect candidate to learn the Goken, and hopefully I'll be able to add a little something to make it my own personal style down the line. It'll be awesome, you can bet on it, Tabeyo. Oh fuck no! I refuse to adopt that stupid, awesome, verbal tick. Enough monologuing to myself, it's time for me to get to work on transforming myself from a dope into a genius, both of talent and of hard work. I couldn't remember where Team Guy was supposed to train in canon, so I used fanfiction as my guide and tried searching in the areas around Training Ground 9. It turns out fanfiction was correct, and I didn't need to waste my time or chakra to use clones to help me search. When I found Guy and his mini-me, they were without Niji and Tenten. I assumed that it was a day off, and the two were simply training fanatics before shrugging to myself and approaching them. Yosh! Lee! Fan the flames of your youth with another 500 push-ups. The larger bushy brows bellowed. Hi, Gi-sensei. And if I cannot do that, then I will run around the village 50 times before lunch, yelled out the mini bushy brows. How youthful, my prized student! I will help you. And if you cannot do that, then I shall climb the Hokage monument with my pinkies and 3 boulders tied to my back. The bigger one rejoined excitedly. My right eyebrow started to twitch. Gi-sensei! Lee screamed. Lee! Guy returned. I was reconsidering my decision, but I was already committed. And I didn't want to trust simple luck to keep me alive in the future, not with all of the stupidly powerful people that will be trying to kill me in the future. Excuse me? I cut the 2 spandex-wearing freaks before they could initiate their sunset genjutsu of youth, homoeroticism. They cut off their screaming and hugging in order to turn and see who interrupted them. Guy's face took on a look of surprise for a moment before he hid it behind a mask of congeniality. OH, Lee, we have a guest. Who are you, my young friend? Are you here to fan the fires of your youth? Guy knew exactly who this boy was, but it wouldn't do to act as if he did. Deceiving the child was such an unyouthful act, but it was on the Hokage's orders. Yo-yo-yo-tha! Lee shrieked, reminding me of Sakura in a sick and twisted way. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and in a way I suppose I am? I shrugged, really put off by the 2 of them. Even though I knew they were basically 2 of the very few people in Konoha who wouldn't look down on me and would help me grow stronger at the moment. I scuffed the ground with the toe of my sandal and looked down bashfully as I asked my question and put my future in Guy's hands. I was hoping that you would help me train in taijutsu. I heard from some of the other shinobi talking that you were an expert, Guy-san. I glanced up and saw a strange look on Guy's face and an excited one on Lee's, so I hurried to explain my reasoning in the hopes that Lee's enthusiasm and my reasons would influence him to say yes. Guy wasn't sure how to feel. He knew that the boy wasn't the QB, but he also knew of his bad reputation as a loudmouth, obnoxious brat, and as a chronic prankster. However, the child before him didn't seem to be either of those 2 things, but someone honestly seeking guidance and help in becoming stronger. Well, I'm not very well liked by most people in the village. I began. Lee seemed to be confused, but Guy obviously understood. So the instructors at the academy found ways to sabotage me, either by training me wrong or by finding ways to avoid training me altogether. So eventually I gave up trying to learn from them. Sadly, that included just about everything in the academy, and with the civilians all hating me and overcharging me for everything or just kicking me out of places, it's a wonder I even managed to graduate as the dead last. Lee's eyes widened at that particular title, and Guy's took on a hard glint. For the longest time I just accepted that that was the way my life was. I pretended to be as dumb as I could to avoid making the people who hated me think I was a threat. I gave up on learning because no one would bother to help me, but now that I'm a shinobi. I flicked my forehead protector as I said that to emphasize my point. I not only need to learn and become strong in order to survive, but I also need it to protect my comrades, to not be a liability, and to make everyone see that I have value too. That I'm not worthless like they think I am. That I'm not a monster. And even as a simple genin, I can now access resources that I couldn't before. No one but Hokage Gigi can stop me, and I know he wants me to succeed. So I'm doing my best to catch up to everyone else for now. However, given a bit of help and some time, I'll be sure to run right by them so that they can see my back. So that I can show them that I'm not a dope, but their comrade. And especially so I can become strong enough to find people special to me, protect them, and become Hokage so that I can protect everyone in the village. I finished my speech with a clenched fist and fire burning in my eyes. I may have come up with those words to appeal to Guy and Lee, but somewhere along the way I had gotten caught up in what I was saying and a bit of canon Naruto seeped through. I guess I might have to watch out for being influenced by Naruto's, my, original beliefs and goals. Guy and Lee both had their heads bowed, their bowl cuts hiding their eyes in shadow. Before they suddenly appeared at my side, each grasping one of my shoulders. "Yosh. What spirit and determination you have, young man. I Mato Guy will ensure that you gain the strength to protect your comrades. If I cannot do this, I will do 10 million push-ups on one thumb." Guy bellowed while striking a nice guy pose and his teeth flashed. He decided to train Naruto just as he was training Lee. It would be most youthful to have them spar with each other and push each other to improve and excel. Naruto-san. You are so youthful. To suffer so much and yet still desire to get stronger to protect others. Yosh, I will fan my flames of youth with you. And if I cannot. Lee also entered a nice guy pose, flashing teeth and all. Lee was ecstatic about having another disciple of Guy-sensei to train with. They would fan their flames of youth together. I stopped listening to them at that point, content to let them do their thing for a bit before I reminded them of what I was there for. So, I interrupted some ridiculous claim about running to Kumo and back on 2 fingers. When can we get started? And do I need weights or anything? The day passed quickly after that. I got to know Lee and Guy a bit better before Guy took some of his old weights out of a sealing scroll. Guy told me that I would be starting off with only 50 pounds on each leg and that I would go up from there depending on how much and how fast my strength improved and how much I felt I could handle. Although he did tell me he would keep me from going overboard right. Then the 2 training fanatics put me through the workout from hell before kicking my ass 6 ways to Sunday. Then they had me repeat all of it 4 more times. My ass had been thoroughly kicked, the disorientation from a clone dispelling every now and then didn't help, and even with my new body I felt tired. Surprisingly enough, I wasn't exhausted, definitely tired, but not overmuch. This just proved how much untapped potential Naruto had as a shinobi if Kishimoto wasn't such an asshole to him. So I made sure Guy knew to go harder on me tomorrow. Damn masochistic tendencies and desire to be strong. They told me to show up here at 4 in the morning every day before once again striking nice guy poses and telling me that they looked forward to seeing me tomorrow. Before he left, Guy-sensei now I guess, gave me a sealing scroll that contained heavier weights that I could use in the days ahead. After they left, I continued training until my last clone dispelled, leaving me dead on my feet just as the sun was setting. I headed back to my shitty apartment and cooked myself my first homemade dinner in this body, eating enough to feed 10 regular people, before showering. When I no longer stunk of sweat and blood, I meditated for an hour in order to process and store all the information my clones had gathered from the shinobi library. I figured its information was more pertinent than the civilian one at the moment. Then it was time to set my alarm for 3:30 and go to sleep. The 2 weeks before squad assignments flew by like that, with me devouring all the information in the shinobi library available to a lowly genin in only 2 days with the use of my clones. I tucked away a few copies of Simple D and C rank jutsu for later on before I directed my clones towards the civilian library, which took up the rest of the week. Within that time, my knowledge of my current world and its inhabitants soared. Devoting some of the clones towards practicing the few taijutsu katas Guy had taught me improved my knowledge, muscle memory, response time, and reflexes. Along with his merciless training of my original body, I had raised my ability with taijutsu greatly, probably putting me about even with Sasuke, and was starting to show serious results with my strength and speed as well. In addition to all that, my chakra control had gone from truly terrible to fairly acceptable. I had mastered the tree climbing exercise in 2 days with the help of my clones, and the mastered spinning leaves as I stuck to the tree the day after that. Water walking soon followed, and once my clones had that down, with the leaf spinning added on, I went and bought some balloons and rubber balls. Oh yeah, I was going to learn the Rasengan, and I was not going to be a retard and try to do it without my clones like in the original timeline. If retard me could do it in a month by himself, I give myself max 2 weeks to be able to form it with one hand by using clones. My final endeavor with chakra control for now was beginning to learn wind nature transformation. I had several reasons for this. One was that I knew I had that affinity. I didn't know if I had gained any more by becoming Naruto, but I knew I had wind at least, and wind-natured Rasengan would be sweet. Second was that with water walking done, I didn't really know any other chakra control exercises besides nature transformations. And though I had made progress, I could now tell how much chakra I was losing when I tried the few weak jutsu I knew and had even managed to reduce it by about half. Although that just meant that I was using 5 times as much as was needed as opposed to 10 times as much, and I would like to improve that. All in all, I felt like I had made fantastic progress, and I appreciated the cheat that was the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. After returning from my morning workout with the Spandex twins, I showered, ate a hearty breakfast a clone had whipped up for me, and finally broke out my new wardrobe. It might not have any orange in it, but it was pretty badass. I had a black mask just like Kakashi's on my face, mostly so that I could fuck with the annoying Cyclops, but also because it would help hide my facial expressions. My hands and forearms were covered with black, fingerless gloves and the bracers that ANBU wear. On my torso I wore a black sleeveless shirt and the ANBU chest protector, and for pants I had loose black pants that were taped at my ankles. My Konoha headband sat proudly on my forehead, black shinobi sandals covered my feet, and my kunai pouch was secured on my right thigh along with extra bandages to finish up my ensemble. All in all, I thought I looked pretty cool, if only I would grow a bit more. That's not to say that I hadn't grown any, because I had really underestimated either the Uzumaki heritage or the healing effects of Kurama's chakra flowing through my veins, because I had already sprouted up 13 centimeters in this week alone, although the food costs were horrendous, going from a 147.5 centimeters, 4 feet 8 inches, chibi to a 160.5 centimeters, 5 feet 2 inches giant. Well, comparative to my peers who were all around 150 centimeters, 4 feet 9 inches, tall at this point. I was holding out hope that by correcting my diet this early in the series I could reach at least 183 centimeters or 6 feet tall. 'Cause man did I hate being short, at least my classmates wouldn't be able to call me a chibi along with a dobe. That's not even mentioning that I had gotten the weight up from 50 pounds each leg to about 250 pounds each leg by the end of the week without slowing myself down, something I was very proud of. Ready as I would ever be, I headed out, but not to the academy. I had one stop to make before I confronted my classmates. The secretary sneered at me like usual after she got over her surprise at my new appearance, but I paid her no mind as I barged my way into Gigi's office like usual. "Hey, Gigi," I called as I trooped into his office. The old man was sitting behind his desk, which was filled with stacks of paperwork, both finished and unfinished. I clearly saw a moment of shock on his face, causing me to grin under my new mask, before he schooled his features. Naruto, what are you doing here? Don't you have to report to the academy for squad assignments? And you've sprouted up like a weed. What have you been eating? I also see you've changed your outfit. What prompted this somewhat drastic change?" Hiruzen sat back in his chair as his eyes flickered over my form, cataloging more information than I probably even knew I was giving away. He's changed so much, even since the last time I saw him, and even then he was changing, Hiruzen thought. What could have happened to alter everything about the boy? I hope you are truly fine, Naruto. I couldn't forgive myself if any more harm came to you. I've already failed both your parents, and you so much more than you will ever know. To be fair to Hiruzen, he hadn't seen me for a while. I hadn't had the time to stop by since I had dropped off my shinobi registration picture and had the standard Konohamaru and Ebisu experience. I was apparently now Konohamaru's boss and rival, and Ebisu ended up bleeding out from his nose. At that point I was still a midget and wore my orange jumpsuit. Of course I was in my new digs for he picture itself though. "Leo," I began. Once I officially became a genin, I figured I should try to correct the damage done to me and my education by those who hated me for housing the QB. I said it in a somewhat chipper tone, but Gigi still flinched a bit. So I henged some of my clones and had them go buy me food and gear that wasn't overpriced, along with reading everything I could access in both of the village's libraries to cover the gaps in my knowledge from the biased instructors in academy, and found out that eating only ramen, while delicious, was bad for me and would stunt my growth. Then I started training with Lee and Gai-sensei to fix up my basic taijutsu and increase my strength and speed. Also, I had my clones do a lot of chakra control exercises since I figured out that I get the memories from them. Let me tell you, it sped up my training and cut down my learning curve by a ton. Not to mention that everything or rather my clones, read said that bright colors were not good for shinobi. So I decided to cut out the orange, at least until I become a jonin, and I could actually afford to do so because of my henge trick. Does that answer your questions? He was silent for a moment before he sighed and looked very old and tired. Well, you seem to be the Naruto that I know, he gave a tired laugh, although I must say that I'm quite impressed. I can already tell that you've improved markedly since I saw you last. I also approve of your new attire, It is dark enough to blend in, and the lightweight ANBU armor should help keep you safe in case you get caught off guard on missions outside the village. Now what did you come here to tell me, Naruto? I know you must be excited to meet your squad and Jonin-sensei. Hiruzen asked as he leaned forward and smiled at me. I looked at the ground for a moment and steeled my nerve before looking up and meeting his eyes, not only as my Jiji, but also as the Hokage. I wanted to tell you that in the coming days you might see me change. His eyes widened in surprise at my announcement. I won't be pulling any more pranks, unless they really deserve it. I won't be shouting out about becoming Hokage, although I will, and I won't be acting as if nothing in the world can dim my smile or drain my spirit. As a ninja of Konoha, I no longer have to suffer in silence as I am discriminated against simply because of what was sealed inside me at birth. And so I won't. He made to say something, but I held up a hand and he decided to hear me out. I won't lash out at others, but I also won't be a doormat any longer. I've decided to become a shinobi of Konoha, and as such I will be accorded the respect I deserve as one of its protectors. Whether or not the people like it matters not to me. I will protect them, my friends, my loved ones, and this village with my life, and they will come to understand that I am not the Kyuubi, and that they have made a great number of mistakes involving me. However, I am the bigger person and I will make them see that. I finished with conviction before adding a light-hearted comment. So keep that hat warm for me, Gigi. He took a moment to absorb my words before he smiled. Good. He stood and approached me before resting his hands on my shoulders. You will be a wonderful shinobi, Naruto, and I am positive you will accomplish all that you set your sights on, and that you will make me proud of you. I smiled up at him as he patted my shoulder gently before reminding me that I needed to get to the academy. I asked him for a favor before I left, which caused him to break out in guffaws before he agreed and had an ANBU fetch me what I asked for. I thought confronting my peers would be a breeze. After all, they were just 12 to 13-year-old brats, and between the original Naruto and the original me we had over 30 years of life under our belts. I was wrong, and it was entirely my body's fault. As most fanfiction points out, hormones and puberty suck. I was nervous, but hit it with a blank face, a purposeful and graceful stride, and my nifty face mask. The scene was pretty much as I expected when I entered. Shikamaru and Choji were sitting together, the former with his head on the table and the latter snacking on a bag of chips. Sasuke was brooding while staring out the window. Hinata was studiously avoiding looking at me directly, although I could feel her gaze upon me. Shino was sitting quietly, watching the rest as his insects buzzed gently. Kiba was fooling around with Akamaru, trying to show off for Hinata. And Ino and Sakura were yet to arrive, just like in canon. Everyone froze when they noticed me. Kiba tripped over his own feet and barely avoided squashing Akamaru. Shino's bugs started buzzing slightly louder. Choji paused with a chip midway to his mouth. Shikamaru glanced up and was about to put his head back down when he froze, and Sasuke glanced at me only to start staring. Hinata alone continued to do what she was doing before, avoid looking at me directly while blushing. My first move was to approach Sasuke and give him a slight bow to the shock of everyone in the room. Uchiha-san, I would like to apologize for my behavior prior to today. It has been brought to my attention that I behaved inappropriately in response to a perceived slight, due to the mistreatment I received from both the villagers as well as the academy instructors. I would like to ask your forgiveness, and wish you good luck on your future endeavors as a fellow shinobi of Konoha. I stayed in my slight bow until Sasuke gathered his scattered wits, and gave a dismissive grunt to signal his agreement. HN. Thank you, Uchiha-san. Once again you have my apology. Standing from my bow I went to take a seat next to Hinata, much to my amusement and her enthused horror. Sasuke followed me out of the corner of his eye, even as he seemed to be wondering about my change in attitude. Good morning, Hinata-chan. You don't mind if I call you by your name, do you? Unlike Uchiha-san, I don't believe I've slighted you, and I feel like we could become good friends. I gave her a double-eye smile from behind my mask. I had two clones spend hours perfecting it. Gigi good morning and Naruto-kun. I don't really mind, IW would like that. The stuttering tomato of a Hyuga replied, looking like she was about to faint. Naruto is talking to me. We haven't really ever talked before. I hope he doesn't think I'm weird because I'm stuttering and turning red. Come on, Hinata, be brave. This is your chance to spend time with him and get to know each other. Hinata attempted to keep herself calm and muster her courage. Good. I train every morning at 4 at Training Ground 9 with a few friends if you would like to join. I think it would be a good opportunity to learn more about each other, and I was rudely interrupted by Kiba. What are you doing walking in here and chatting up Hinata-chan like you own the place, dead last? This is for squad assignments, and that means you need to have graduated the academy. Which you failed. The mutt barked at me as the mutt on his head barked in agreement. Well, Inuzuka-san, I was thinking that I would apologize to Uchiha-san, try to engage Hinata-chan in conversation as I really haven't talked to her, before greeting the rest of you. Then I would inevitably have to point out to some less intelligent individual, probably you based on past experience, that I am in fact wearing a Konoha headband and therefore am an academy-graduated genin. Just like you, Inuzuka-san. Then I planned on making a statement to all of you once everyone was here to address my past behavior and set a tone for the future. However, if you would like to ask some questions before that, I would be amenable to answering. I replied civilly, but with a bit of bite, not rising to his juvenile bait as I finally calmed my nerves. Troublesome, came a soft groan. Alright then, Naruto. What's up with the complete change in behavior, speech pattern, height, and dress code? Just like Shikamaru to cut to the heart of the matter without even lifting his head up from the table. HN. The master conversationalist, Sasuke, added his 2 cents. Well, to answer you in the order you asked? I managed to graduate and am therefore no longer under the power of the civilian council, but Hokage Jiji. That means that they can't do anything to me anymore, such as sabotaging my education, or raising the taxes on my food, or threaten to punish me for no actual reason, only that they don't want me to succeed. This led me to be able to access the libraries, as is a shinobi's right, when before the villagers had the power to deny me access. This allowed me to actually learn something without anyone trying to teach it to me wrong on purpose or prevent me from learning it in the first place. Thus I learned how a shinobi should act, and added a variety of new words to my vocabulary. To say that everyone looked shocked would be putting it mildly. Everyone but Kiba and maybe Choji understood what I was implying and outright saying about my treatment from the academy instructors and the village in general. Kiba just looked constipated. I blithely continued on, ignoring their growing shock, disbelief, horror, and outrage. In my mission to educate myself, I learned about proper nutrition, and took it upon myself to correct my diet by any means necessary. I have always healed quickly, and it seems that healing factor applies to correcting malnutrition as well. Finally, as I progressed in my studies and training, I understood the dangers of missions outside the village. I understood that while I may enjoy the color orange, it is not exactly discreet and would be a beacon to any hostiles around my squad. Thus I got rid of it for something more suited to life as a shinobi, at least until I am strong enough to protect those around me from whatever or whoever may come. I finished with a smile and spread my arms, glancing condescendingly at Kiba, before throwing a wink at a stunned Hinata and looking back at Shikamaru. Does that answer your questions? I asked with a nice smile. Silence reigned in the classroom. Everyone looked shocked, disbelieving, and angry in various degrees. Kiba mostly angry, at me presumably, Shikamaru mostly shocked as he stared at me, Sasuke in disbelief, and Hinata with swirls in her eyes and steam coming from her fire truck red face. Naruto-kun is so cool, and he winked at me. I need to Yore. Hinata tried to pull herself together, but her brain had already shut down from all the steam coming from her face. It was then that I heard the thundering of incoming fangirls. Incoming fangirls, Uchiha-san. I warned Sasuke. HN. He grunted his thanks for the warning and turned back to his window just as Sakura and Ino came storming in, arguing about who crossed the threshold first. Both of them froze when they saw me sitting by a still delirious Hinata. I could almost see the giant question mark above Sakura's head, and I could see Ino's eyes turn sharp as she took in my form before they turned into hearts, and she started to drool a little before catching herself and glancing between Sasuke and me. Yo. I greeted them with a nice smile, causing Ino to blush a bit. Who's the new guy? Sakura asked everyone. The room was silent before Shikamaru sighed. Troublesome. That's Naruto. Apparently he graduated, got some special training in, and it agreed with him. After he was done saying that, he put his head back down as if done with all of us. Wait, what? Ino and Sakura shrieked together, as they whipped their heads back and forth between Shikamaru and me. I gave them another eye smile and a little wave. There is no way this hunk is Naruto. Naruto is a chibi and a dobe, and this guy is almost as hot as Sasuke-kun. Ino shared her hurtful, yet flattering opinion. Sakura chimed in with a shrill yeah. There is no way this guy is Naruto baka. I'm wounded, Ino-san, Sakura-san. To think you held such low opinions of me simply because of how hard the instructors and the villagers worked to keep me uneducated and inept. I spoke with mock hurt in my posture and voice, shoulders slumping and wiping away an imaginary tear. Although I suppose I should thank you for calling me hot, it is the first compliment to my looks a girl has ever given me. So thank you, Ino-san. I finished with a nod in her direction. Wait, so that really is Naruto Baka? Sakura asked everyone, but she was looking at her Sasuke-kun for confirmation. Sasuke replied with a nod. No way! Both girls shrieked again, jaws on the floor and eyes bugging out. That would be my cue for my announcement to set the tone for future interactions, I said to myself with a sweat drop at the shock and shriek of the twin banshees. Standing up, I went to the front of the class and cleared my throat, getting everyone's attention. As I've already let most of you know, I am not the Naruto you thought you knew. Due to certain circumstances, I was kept ignorant and weak. Granted, my own proclivities and mischievous spirit contributed to those circumstances. Fortunately, I managed to graduate anyway. I then proceeded to properly educate myself, and sought out specific training in order to make up for the deficiencies that were caused by said circumstances. If you don't believe me, then go ask whatever authority figure you choose about me. Odds are they will tell you that I am trouble, or that you should avoid or shun me, but will not explain why. I took a breath and looked over the faces of my audience, observing their reactions before continuing. As I am no longer the dope you knew, I would appreciate it if you would not treat me as such and take your time to form new opinions about the person I am now, and should have been before. I understand that some of you may have trouble with this, and I understand your dilemma. However, I will not take abuse from any of you. We are to be genin of Konoha, comrades that will fight and work together. If you cannot respect me as a comrade who will be risking his life alongside of you at the least, then we will have issues. Thanks for listening. I finished with one last eye smile before sitting down next to Hinata again. Most people look thoughtful, or grudgingly accepting at the least, taking my articulate and reasonable speech as proof that I had indeed changed from how I was before. Kiba looked like he had eaten a lemon, Sasuke looked like he was interested but attempting to look apathetic, Ino looked torn between deriding me, believing me, and drooling over me, but Sakura looked apoplectic. Naruto to Baka. Shut up and stop trying to look cool, Sasuke-kun will always be cooler than a Baka like you. She reared back her fist to punch me as my just desserts. She never got a chance to hit me. The Naruto sitting next to Hinata moved with a burst of speed and another dropped from the ceiling to land behind Sakura, put her in a hold that immobilized her arms, and the first Naruto appeared in front of her with a very sharp kunai held to her throat. Everyone froze, especially Sakura, as she felt the cool steel pressed against her pulsing artery. I spoke calmly, while I gave her a disconcerting eye smile. Now Haruno-san, you wouldn't have been trying to assault a fellow shinobi, would you? I asked her with false sweetness. That would be grounds for punishment, you know? I asked her as if speaking to a particularly slow child. I told you I wouldn't let anyone treat me like they did before, didn't I? It seems like you had some trouble understanding, so let me make it clear to you. You, Haruno Sakura, are a weak, shallow, insignificant fangirl. You will never amount to anything as long as you follow Uchiha-san around and cling to him. Not only that, but you will be a liability to your squad and worse than useless, as they will have to help you in every fight against any halfway competent opponent. I paused there to make sure everyone was paying attention to me before I continued in a serious voice. This goes for all of you girls here. If you are dieting, if you aren't training to gain strength, speed, and stamina, if you aren't practicing your techniques whenever you have half a chance, then you should do yourself and everyone around you a favor and quit trying to be a kunoichi right now. There were sounds of protest at this, but I flared my chakra and burgeoning killing intent ki. If you don't do the aforementioned things, then you will get your squad mates killed and get yourself killed, or captured and most probably raped. If you do the things I just listed, then you would be lambasted by every real kunoichi as a weak, insulting fangirl. They would tell you that dieting is stupid because all the training they do burns off so many calories. If you are worried about looking mannish, they would tell you that men, especially shinobi, drool over bodies that have long, lean, toned muscle, and that having muscle is not the same as having bulky muscle. All of your so-called points are invalid, and if you can't come to grips with that, then I hope you die before you can pull anyone else down with you. I stepped back from Sakura, pulling the knife away from her throat as I did, and sent my clone back into hiding. She fell to her knees in a puddle of her own piss with tears in her eyes as her body was racked with shivers. I looked down at her and gave her a final piece of advice that I made sure the entire class heard. You are weak, pathetically so. However, you don't have to stay that way. Train, put in effort and sweat and blood and tears, and you will get stronger. Quit dieting. Quit thinking that anyone can or will save you but yourself. Take your destiny and life into your own hands and do everything in your power to ensure that you and those you care about live. Or give up now. Quit. And never come back here again. Then I turned my back on the girl and went back to my seat by Hinata. Kiba shied away from me as I passed him. Sasuke was staring at me as if he had never seen me before. Ino looked torn between wanting to castigate me, squeal about how cool I was, or seriously think about her actions and how my words applied to her. Shikamaru was looking at me as if I had become an incredibly complex puzzle. Shino's bugs were buzzing frantically. Choji was staring thoughtfully at a chip. And Hinata was looking at me with wide eyes. It's for their own good, I murmured to Hinata, causing her to start. If they don't shape up, then they really will die. If I can ensure that they take this seriously and survive, or decide to quit before anything happens, then I will gladly be the bad guy. I just don't want them to die because they were too stupid to realize that this isn't a game. I give her a sad, little smile from behind my mask. Iruka takes that as his cue to enter and begins to call out good morning before he notices Sakura and her urine puddle. A swift clean-up, change of clothes, and a long, boring speech about being respectable genin. Later the teams were announced. They were just as in canon. Once Iruka had congratulated me again on graduating and gave his approval of my change in wardrobe, he left us on Team 7 to wait for our sensei. Now, while I had several hundred clones out and about training, I did not feel like waiting 3 hours for Kakashi to show up. So I stood up and made to jump out the window. Dobe, an emo voice called out to me, "Where are you going?" Well, seeing as I've done my research on every jonin in the village, I know that Hatake Kakashi is notorious for being at least 3 hours late to everything except essential missions. Therefore I am going to waste some time observing what the other squads are doing in order to prepare for our test. Also, don't call me Dobe, Uchiha-san. I jumped out the window before they could ask me about the mysterious test I mentioned. While I did send some clones to observe the other teams, I headed to Training Ground 9 and resumed my truncated workout from this morning, intent on reaching 1,000 pounds per leg as soon as possible. After all, I only 750 pounds to go. I made sure to walk into the classroom exactly 3 hours and 1 minute after I had left, showing up right after Kakashi did. As the still shaken Sakura, the brooding and aggravated Sasuke, and the surprised and slightly disconcerted Kakashi all turned to look at me, I smiled and threw up a hand as I said, "Sorry, I was lost on the road of life." Everyone's sweat dropped before Kakashi pulled himself together and said to meet him on the roof before disappearing in a puff of smoke. I did the same, because the me that had walked into the room was a shadow clone and the original me was already waiting on the roof, where I was busy with the thing I had asked Hokage Gigi to get me. When Kakashi appeared on the roof, I was already leaning against the wall with an orange book in hand. However, this book wasn't a certain book of porn, but one about basic seals that just so happened to be orange. I looked up briefly and acknowledged his presence with a wave and a simple yo. Kakashi took one look at me before I smiling. "I think I like you." "That's nice. I think I like me too." I amiably agreed with him, giving him a brief eye smile in return. When the other two arrived, Kakashi and I were standing together, leaning against the wall and both reading orange books. The similarities were striking enough that both Sakura and Sasuke paused and did a double take before asking us if we knew each other. Kakashi and I looked up from our books at them, glanced at each other, and then went back to reading before replying, "No." My other two teammates' sweat dropped but left the subject. Kakashi had us gather around in front of him and asked us to share things about ourselves. Sakura asked him to go first just as she did in canon, and I got ready to fuck with Kakashi some more. "About me? Things I like and things I hate. I don't feel like telling you that. My dreams for the future, never really thought about it. As for my hobbies, I have lots of hobbies," I said at the exact same time as Kakashi without even looking away from my book, casually turning a page as everyone stared at me in shock. I looked up after a few seconds and I smiled. Ma, what's the matter?" Ma, you're pretty creepy, aren't you?" Kakashi asked at the same time. "Well, considering that you are Hatake Kakashi, elite jonin, former ANBU captain, known as the Copy Ninja. That the things you like are friendship, comrades, teamwork, the fourth Hokage, and Ika, and that things you hate are those who break the rules and those who leave their comrades behind, along with being a jonin sensei. Your dreams for the future are to star in the Ika movie and your hobbies are to read Ika. I looked back at my book before turning another page as everyone lapsed into silence. Eventually they pulled themselves together, although they were looking at me oddly as I placidly sat there reading my orange book. Sakura basically just fangirled over Sasuke. I sighed at that, which Kakashi took note of. Then went on to say that the thing she hated was me, to which I smiled at her. Sasuke was emo as hell and a typical Sir broods a lot as usual when talking about killing his brother. Then it was finally my turn. I closed my book gently and took a deep breath. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. Things that I like are the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, ramen, Hokage-jiji, cute and strong kunoichi, and people who seek to improve and protect those precious to them. Things that I hate are fangirls, bigots, people who do not understand the difference between a scroll and something that is sealed inside of it, and those who are lazy. My dreams for the future are to gain many precious people, become strong enough to protect them, and become a greater Hokage than any that have come before me. My hobbies include training to get stronger, abusing the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, learning Fuinjutsu, and messing with people who aggravate me. Well, that was unexpected, Kakashi muttered as he rubbed the back of his head. Now that we know a bit more about each other, meet me at Training Ground 7 tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Sakura asked him what would we be meeting him for, and the whole pointless argument about whether or not we needed survival training or whether Kakashi could test us and or send us back to the academy if we failed happened. Then he threatened us about eating and told us that we would throw up if we did. As soon as he left, I stood up and told my new teammates, "Make sure you two eat, it's better to have energy than not to." Then I left to train a bit more before I grabbed dinner, meditated on what my clones had done that day and went to sleep with my alarm set for 7 o'clock. I decided to sleep in and skip training tomorrow so that I was at my best for the bell test. I brought 2 breakfast bentos with me when I showed up, 2 hours and 30 minutes after Kakashi said to, and he still wasn't there. However, my grumpy, hungry, and sleep-deprived teammates were, and they were not happy that I was late. At least until I pulled out the food I had brought for them. As they began to eat with quiet and grudging words of thanks, I began to read my book on beginning Fuinjutsu by Jiraiya. I already had clones working on my calligraphy, hand seal speed and accuracy, chakra control, and my taijutsu katas, but I was planning on using them for so much more. However, I still had time to get myself up to at least the strength of a Chunin before the wave mission came around so that I could compete with Haku. At 8 o'clock, Kakashi came walking up, explained the rules of the test, and had us begin. The other 2 scampered off into the woods to hide, while I remained seated in the shade of a tree and read my book. Kakashi couldn't seem to figure me out. "You know, the other 2 seemed to have the right idea, but you seemed kind of inept." He ventured his opinion. "You seem to have gotten that sentence backward," I rejoined. They both ran off without even thinking about the situation, and therefore split our squad and diminished our overall fighting potential. We're just newbie genin, and you're an elite jonin. The only possible way for us to even get a bell is for all of us to work together. Not only that, but I've never heard of a 2 or 1 person genin squad. So with the inference that such a thing does not exist if Konoha's libraries have no mentions of it, and knowing not only of your fixation on teamwork, but also that teamwork is the only possible way to get a bell, this must be a test within a test. It's to see if we can figure out that we need to work as a team and then do so to get the bells from you. However, it's pointless for me to do anything at all in that case. Oh? If you've figured out the test already, then why would trying to pass it be pointless? Kakashi was astounded that Naruto had figured all of that out. From all reports about him, Naruto was an idiot and an almost useless shinobi. This kid didn't seem to fit either category. I huffed tiredly at him. That would be because Haruno-san hates me, as she said before, and will undoubtedly try to find Uchiha-san in order to help him get a bell to try and endear herself to him like the rabid fangirl she is. MC Broods a lot, on the other hand, wouldn't deign to work with the dead last, as I would supposedly only slow him down. Besides that, at max 2 people can get a bell, and why would he want to risk me getting the bell than letting him fail? I shrugged apathetically. In other words, there is no point in even trying to fight you. I'll just wait for the time to run out and return to the academy for a year. Next year I'll be assigned another squad and another sensei, hopefully one I can work with and one who actually wants to teach me. By that point I should be at least at high Chunin or low Jonin in strength now that I've got shadow clones to help me with my chakra control and ninjutsu training and Gai Sensei to help me with my taijutsu. So don't worry about it too much, Kakashi-san. I smiled at him as I finished. He's already accepted that they're going to fail, Kakashi thought in shock. Naruto, his sensei's son, the irrepressible bundle of energy and optimism that he watched over as the kid grew up in the worst conditions imaginable, had given up on becoming a shinobi for another year. It didn't matter that he gave up because of a well-reasoned and very accurate assessment of his supposed teammates. just the fact that the Kandu King had given up at all shocked and saddened Kakashi to his core. Not even Naruto's assertions about his clones or the level of strength that he would be at in another year made as big of an impact as the words "it's pointless to even try" leaving the blonde's lips. Eventually Kakashi got over his shock and went to hunt down the other two, leaving the blonde to his reading. Things went as they did in the original story, with the exception that I didn't move an inch from my spot under the tree. Soon enough Kakashi returned and told us that we had failed. I looked up at this and smiled as I held up a pair of bells just as the alarm rang. Kakashi grabbed the bells at his waist, which suddenly transformed back into a pair of shadow clones. With wide eyes he asked me, "When did you switch the bells?" "When you were busy with Uchiha-san and his fire safety class. I had a clone swipe them and these two substitute in for them. I then threw them both to Sasuke and Sakura, who eagerly caught them." "Their teamwork," I deadpanned. Kakashi held back a grin while doing the whole thunder and lightning spiel before letting us know that we passed and would be accepting our first mission as Team 7 tomorrow, and that we should show up at the bridge by this training ground at 6 in the morning. I stood up and dusted myself off before heading over to Training Ground 9, planning to show up at the bridge at 9 o'clock. I couldn't wait to see my teammates' faces when they realized we were going to be doing glorified chores as missions. I'll need to bring a camera. So it was official. D-rank missions suck big, fat, floppy donkey. Not that I know what that's like, honest. Moving on then. It's been over a month and a half and all I can say is that they're useless for ninja. There wasn't any point to them besides benefiting Konoha's infrastructure, no matter what Kakashi said about teamwork. And while I get that they help keep the village running efficiently, well, as efficiently as it ever runs, honestly, Academy students should have done these tasks instead of actual ninja. Although I had to agree with him that my team and I really did need to work on our teamwork, even if it would never help in the end. The Cyclops stuck to the original timeline as far as training went. We'd grab a mission or two, then do teamwork drills for an hour before he left, and all of us separated. That is not to say that I was not advancing by leaps and bounds thanks to my knowledge of the anime and manga, ideas stolen from fanfiction stories, training from hell with Lee and Gai-sensei, and the liberal application of hacks no jutsu. I had managed to convince Guy to get me a sheet of chakra paper by telling him that my Jonin sensei, a certain Cyclopean ninja, was a lazy, hip, good-for-nothing. I proceeded to rant about how unyouthful it was that he refused to teach us anything except for teamwork drills and light sparring, and that I needed him to help me find direction for me to fan my flames of youth. I nearly had an aneurysm when I said that with a straight face, but it got the job done. Thank you, inherent Naruto enthusiasm, for growing stronger. Yeah, I'm awesome. Like I thought I still had the original wind nature, but I also had a second chakra nature, lightning. Team can suck it. I was ecstatic. Some of the most OP, badass jutsu in the world were lightning-natured. And if the two natural chakra natures I had were pretty much only made for attacking? Well, I could deal with that. Being an Uzumaki and the Kyuubi Jinchuriki allowed me to tank a lot of damage anyway, and originally I would never have learned any defensive jutsu and would still win in the end. 'Cause I'm awesome and going to be the Hokage. I just have to get a water affinity next. I could think of plenty of ways to use the Kirigikyo no Jutsu. Mohahaha, suck it dojutsu users. Ahem, back on topic. So once I learned of my additional nature, I set my clones to mastering both of them. After all, if retard me could master wind nature manipulation in a week with his clones, then I should be able to at least get both of mine to usable levels fairly quickly. Other than starting my path to true badassery, I advanced my weights to over 2,000 pounds each. It seems like a lot at first, but when you realize that Lee, essentially a civilian, can add up to 100 pounds in a week, then it makes sense that someone like me can do even more absurd things. My new goal is to get up to 810,000 pounds each for the Chunin exams. I think I can do it with the way I'm advancing. Yosh, I will fan my flames of wild weight. Oh fuck no! They infected me. I'm one of them now. Next thing you know, my eyebrows will turn into caterpillars, and I'll decide bowl cuts and green spandex are cool. Okay, I overreacted. I still think everything but their taijutsu skills are incredibly lame. However, the two green beasts have had a definite effect on my psyche. I now enjoy working myself into the dirt while training with them. Especially since my taijutsu has rapidly caught up to Lee's, with the use of shadow clones as extra sparring partners and to practice each kata and technique I learned to perfection. Even then, he's still faster than me. Not to mention that Guy-sensei decided that in order to protect my special people I needed a secret technique. Cookie to whoever can guess what that is, he. Oh yeah, learning the Rasengan? Piece of cake with shadow clones. I learned it the way retard Naruto used it, i.e. clones to shape it, in under a week. Then I learned to do it one-handed with just a few days more of effort, and decided to make Urama Rasengan early for shits and gigs. When I was done with that, I figured I might as well be able to make one in each hand at the same time. It took me 2 weeks all told with several dozen dedicated helpers. While I was busy with that I had some more clones crack open those low-rank jutsu scrolls that I squirreled away. Shunshin gave me a new appreciation for how good Shursui must have been to use it in battle. The first time I tried to chain multiple Shunshins in quick succession I ended up crashing into a tree and trying not to hurl as I waited for my broken face to heal. I relegated it to movement usage only, not for combat for now. After all, I had more important things to learn and do, like some awesome wind and lightning jutsu, Fuinjutsu, and working out how to use the Raikage lightning release armor. Let the awesome jutsu training commence. For the first few I decided on low-rank jutsu to add some versatility to my arsenal. Boring. So although I might have said that I only went through information that a genin could access, and copied some low-rank jutsu, I may have gotten carried away and snuck into the jonin section as well. What can I say? If I'm Naruto now, that means I have to be a prankster and a master of stealth with little regard for rules. I recreated Sora's beast-tearing palm, beast-tearing gale palm, and Asuma's hien first, as those were almost pure nature and shape transformation in addition to simple chakra quantity. All of which are things that I'm absurdly good at doing. Not to mention they're easy to practice with shadow clones. Then I went about learning wind style, divine wind, great breakthrough, wind wall, and gale palm. They were primarily C-rank techniques, but the beast-tearing gale palm was classed as a B-rank, and so was the hien, which was just a technique Asuma made by putting wind nature and shape manipulation to practical use on a blade. As for lightning jutsu, I only learned a select few, 1 high and 2 low, as I was mostly working on the Raikage's lightning release armor, since it's just so damn awesome. They consisted of lightning style, electromagnetic murder, false darkness, in honor of Kakuzu, and thunderbolt, Raitan, Sandaburuto, because the name of it tickled me a little. As for my Fuinjutsu, well, I wasn't dead yet, so that was good. While it may be true that those of the Uzumaki clan have a natural talent and predisposition towards Fuinjutsu, it is also true that both retard Naruto and I have a somewhat lax and sometimes careless nature. Hey! Yeah, I am kinda carefree at times. Which leads us to the occasional mistake. Which leads us to explosions. Which are awesome! Which is why I now had my clones working on Fuinjutsu away from anything flammable, or that would be missed. As in, I have them experimenting in the forest of death where Anko is the only person I can think of that could be around. Other than that minor hiccup, I was on to the first of the intermediate level Fuinjutsu books, also written by our favorite super pervert. So from what Jiraiya's books and Hokage say, there are 10 levels of ceiling, although it is speculated that the original Uzumaki clan, which I am named in honor of, had up to 12 levels. The ceiling levels work in stages. As in levels 1 to 3 is the beginner stage, 4 to 6 is the journeyman stage, 7 to 9 is the adept stage, and a level 10 is an acknowledged seal master. Only Jiraiya of the Sannin is known to be a level 10 ceiling master, all others are at most level 9 experts. At the moment I am much farther along than I've let Hiruzen know about. I've led him to believe I am still at the level of a rank novice, but I would conservatively place myself at around level 3. Which puts me at around the end of the novice stage and beginning of the journeyman stage, while the Sandaime thinks I'm making my way through level 2 and simply reading ahead as I go. As for everything else, there have been a few noteworthy occurrences. Most notable to me is my continued growth. It's slowed down a lot. I think that means that I've corrected most of the damage malnutrition had done to me. I'm now 5 feet 4 inches, having grown another inch to put even the tallest of my classmates under me. Granted, 4 inches in 2 weeks was a bit ridiculous. 2 in almost 2 months is much more reasonable. And my appetite has been settling down into something resembling what a human my age and size should be able to eat, as opposed to what 10 of them should eat. Then there are things like meeting Teen Guy, convincing Sakura that Sasuke will like her better if she trains a bit and becomes more useful, Hinata training much harder than in canon, Ino approaching me about my drastic change, and finally there was meeting Anko. Man, those interactions were all pretty strange thinking back. Especially since I'm really starting to fuck with canon as much as Kishimoto fucked with retard me. And then there is Anko. I just don't know what to say. I sighed as I blew through my warm-ups. After all, I was just doing some stretching, 15 laps around Konoha, 1,000 push-ups, sit-ups, squats, and 500 pull-ups and handstand push-ups. The girls nearby were doing a much lighter warm-up that involved quite a bit more stretching and fewer weights, as the goals for our physiques are pretty much opposites, just like the girls performing the exercises are pretty much opposites. One had dark, bluish-black hair and a Heim cut, white eyes without a pupil, pale skin, and is currently struggling to push herself to keep up with me. Yep, she is one Hyuga Hinata. She's still shy, but being around people who constantly encourage her and affirm that she is not weak has been nothing but good for her and her confidence. We're still working on her stutter, but she has almost gotten rid of it. Now she can not only talk to me while looking at me, most of the time, but also aim a juke and strike at me. It's a vast improvement over the timid girl who couldn't even look me in the eye. The next girl had platinum blonde hair and a ponytail, light blue eyes, and slightly tanned skin. Not to the extent of my own sun-kissed tan, but getting darker the more she came to train, and I have to say the tan and her new slender, flexible, but powerful muscles combined to make her even more attractive than she already was before. Now if only she would quit complaining and acting like a fangirl, then she might be alright. Got it in one, this girl was Yamanaka Ino. It hadn't been all that long since she joined us for our morning workouts, but she's definitely seeing the results already. Her physique has filled out a bit, and become not only healthier and more muscular, but also more feminine. I guess depriving her body of the nutrients and sustenance that it wanted hampered her development. She already had something of a womanly figure just over a month after she started really training and giving her body the fuel it needed to grow. Although it hadn't helped her personality all that much, she still loved to gossip, insult Sakura, and gush about Sasuke. However, I did notice that she never said anything really bad about me, especially after her first day joining me for training. Well, unless she was cursing me for convincing her to undergo this torture. Little did she know that this wasn't the truly torturous part of my training that came later. The final girl had her brown hair tied up in buns, grayish, brown eyes, and fair skin. This was Tenten. I think her full name is Higurashi Tenten, but she never uses it, so I'm unsure. She has a penchant for throwing weapons at me, trying to prove that she is better than me, and calling me crazy. Flashback no Jutsu. 2 days after team assignments. I showed up at the usual 4 in the morning and Guy-sensei set Lee and me to work. Everything proceeded as usual until sometime around 7 when Team Guy's other members showed up. I had been expecting this to happen for a while now, but had been hoping against hope for it not to happen. Morning, Guy-sensei, chirped a female voice, which could only belong to Tenten. YOSH. Guy paused his light routine of one-armed handstand push-up with a giant boulder balanced on his feet and his thumb, the only finger he was using, pressed against the tip of a kunai. The freak wasn't even sweating yet. My young, youthful students. It is good that you have come to once again fan the flames of your youth. Youth. Came Lee's call from where he was doing pull-ups with a boulder tied to each leg. We also have a new addition to our most youthful training. I'd like you both to meet Naruto. He is a pupil of my eternal rival. However, it seems that my rival has been slacking on his training, and so he showed a most youthful desire to fan his flames of youth and sought me out to assist in his training just over 2 weeks ago. Guy flipped off the kunai and struck a nice guy pose as the giant ass boulder crashed to the ground behind him and his teeth sparkled. Kill me. I begged Niji and Tenten from where I am doing squats, then kicking the training board like a machine, no emotion in my voice, nor life in my eyes. Did I forget to mention that I am holding yet another giant boulder over my head the entire time? How about that I have shackles attached to my ankles that connect to smaller boulders, making kicking even more difficult than it would normally be, since not only do they add to the weight on my legs, but also they make keeping my form more difficult. That's great, Guy-sensei? Tenten more asked than said as she glanced at Niji for his opinion, clearly aghast that I seemed to be doing much the same workout as Guy has Lee did. He simply snorted in derision and moved off to warm up by himself. So have you talked to Naruto-sensei about actually training him and not slacking? Tenten asked, not knowing what she is unleashing upon Kakashi. YOSH. Guy clenched his fist and flames burned in his eyes. That is exactly what I will do. I shall remind my eternal rival of our burning passion and fan his flames of youth into a sweltering furnace of YOUTH. Yula! Comes the echo from Lee. Kill me. I said again, and Tenten looked at me with pity as she moved off to train. Somewhere in Konoha, a scarecrow felt a shiver of dread run down his spine as he stared at a monument for the dead and checked to make sure he had another few hours before he had to arrive, late, to meet his team. Little did he know that his fate had been sealed by a 14-year-old girl's casually spoken words. Tenten's pity and Niji's scorn lasted until we sparred for the first time. Well, Tenten's pity ended, but Niji would probably still scorn me until I kicked his ass in the Chunin exams. If that will even happen anymore, shit, those are bad thoughts. I fought Tenten first, and it wasn't even close. I might not be as fast as Lee yet, but even so I was faster than Sasuke and Niji. The poor girl never knew what hit her, until I let her stand up and hit her with it again. Then she figured out I was hitting her with my fist. It would have been better if I'd used a giant fish, more impact that way. However, by that time she was too out of it to do anything but be knocked unconscious. When she woke up she demanded a rematch, and I pissed her off by avoiding all of her weapons with speed and my hand seal-less substitution jutsu before I punched her into the dream world again. After that, Guy wanted Niji and me to spar, but Niji declined, saying that his time was better spent elsewhere, and that being forced to fight one failure was more than enough for him. After that day Niji and I would ignore each other, except for his whiny and sanctimonious ramblings about fate, and Tenten would challenge me, lose, curse me, challenge me again, and lose again. Rinse and repeat. The sheer rage and disbelief on her face almost made how annoying it was to be constantly challenged to spar and have pointy, sharp things flung at me all the time worth it. Guy just saw it as me taking my training to the next level, and complimented me on my flames of youth. When it was time for me to leave and meet my team, I thanked Guy and Lee for their help with a friendly wave, nodded shallowly at Niji, and gave Tenten a shit-eating grin of massive proportions and wished her a swift recovery from her concussion. Team time was the same as usual. Some boring and tedious D-rank mission, an hour of teamwork exercises, but after that Kakashi changed it up a bit. First he had us all run laps and do push-ups, sit-ups, and pull-ups for a bit, leaving Sasuke sweating and Sakura a heap on the ground, while I was raring to go. Then we had some light sparring. The asshole put me up against Sakura first, as if she would have even been a challenge for retard Naruto with how out of breath she was. I waited until she had caught her breath enough to stand up straight. "You ready to go yet, Harino-san?" I asked her politely. "Shut it, Naruto baka. I'm going to kick your ass," Sakura screamed back at me. "Geez, I was just trying to be considerate to a teammate. You're so out of shape and weak I figured I'd give you time to catch a breather so I didn't embarrass you too bad. No need to shriek at me like a banshee. And you wonder why Sasuke doesn't like you?" I paused for a moment as Kakashi's eye widened. Sasuke turned to actually look at me with surprise, and Sakura seemed to have turned to stone as her brain shut down. "Oh, did I say that out loud?" I asked my two fellow males. Sasuke gave what I think was an affirmative grunt. "Yep, I'd get ready to run, Naruto," Kakashi chimed in as he returned to reading his book. "Why?" I asked with a shrug, getting the two to look at me again in disbelief. "I mean, it's not like she could catch me anyway. I outran Sasuke and he was better than her by miles. I had even held myself back so that I only beat him by a bit. It was just enough to make him train harder and maybe start to respect me a bit. But they didn't need to know that. Even if she did, she's basically a civilian at this point. Her punches wouldn't even hurt unless she hit me in the balls, and that can't happen unless I let it because I'm just that much better than her. She actually either goes home or stalks Sasuke when Bakashi-sensei lets us go for the day." I put my hands out to my sides as I shrugged my shoulders as if to say, "There you have it." I quickly sidestepped and extended a foot, casually tripping Sakura, who was red-faced with fury. She had swung for the back of my head with all her might, and so ended up with a hard fall and a face full of dirt. However, she didn't seem to get the lesson, as she got up and proceeded to try and hit me while shrieking about me being an idiot and the dead last, and about trying to make her look bad in front of Sasuke. I simply carelessly avoided her blows and occasionally tripped her as I nonchalantly pulled out my intermediate ceiling book and began to read while making it look like I was dodging and tripping her on accident. Kakashi was aghast, not knowing whether to be appalled at his new apparent nickname, how bad Sakura truly was, or to wonder when Naruto got good enough to do something like this. "Wait, he said that Sakura didn't train after he let them go for the day. Did that mean Naruto actually trained by himself? How did he not know about this?" Sasuke looked back and forth between Kakashi and the dobe a few times, trying to figure out if he'd been teaching Naruto privately or not. He decided not, as Kakashi looked just as surprised as he felt. Maybe Naruto wouldn't be as much of a hindrance as he thought, but he would have to step his training up so that he could show the dobe his place. He was an Uchiha after all. Once Sakura was once again a panting heap on the ground, I looked up from my book and I smiled at everyone. Oh, are you done already? I asked as I pocketed my book. I guess I shouldn't have expected more from a civilian girl who hasn't really committed to being a ninja yet. The reason Sasuke doesn't want to do anything with you is that you are 1. A fangirl, 2. Annoying as fuck, especially when you scream, 3. Not a real kunoichi, 4. Weak. I dropped my smile and looked down at the girl who was almost in tears and hardened my heart. Maybe if you went about changing some of that he would have time for you. As it is, even I don't have to try at all to beat you, you're that weak. If you want your precious Sasuke-kun to acknowledge you, then stop dieting and train like your life depends on it. I released my burgeoning Ki at this point. Kakashi's head whipped up, Sasuke froze, and Sakura started shaking like in the classroom. Thinking about it, you'd have thought she would have reconsidered how she treated me after I made her piss herself in front of all our peers. Well, I guess some people are just slow learners. Man, I love irony. Because it does, and not just your life, but all of ours do. Kakashi-sensei is our safety net, but even he can't always be there. And when the time comes when you become a liability, because it will happen, there is no if here. Then you will die. Or one of us will save your life. I leaned in and ratcheted up my Ki to its peak, but at what cost? Oh, don't worry, I for one will do my best to keep you alive, but I don't want to die for you, Haruno. Sasuke was staring at me, like he is seeing me for the first time and I am someone completely unexpected. Kakashi had the same look on his face as Sasuke. Sakura was simply crying as she shook in fear. I have a dream, I have goals beyond impressing a boy I have a crush on, and hopefully popping out his babies one day. I want to be Hokage, and even if I don't want you to die, I don't think you're worth my life. Then I released my Ki and turned to Kakashi. We done for the day, Kakashi-sensei? I asked cheerfully, catching everyone off guard. Mama, don't you think that's a bit disrespectful towards your sensei Naruto? And yes, I think that's enough for today, the Cyclopean Jonin said with a lazy wave. Nope, I instantly replied, getting a sweat drop from Kakashi. You have to teach us something to be considered a sensei. Teamwork doesn't count. If you teach me a cool lightning jutsu, I'll consider it. Now Naruto, teamwork is the foundation of any good team. I smiled. Besides, I think you should wait a bit longer before you learn something dangerous like that. Whatever, I said disinterestedly. Later, Uchiha-sen, Kakashi-sensei, Haruno-san. No need to be rude, even if I just tore down the girl's self-esteem lower than Danzo's underground base. It wasn't all that much compared to Sasuke or me, but Sakura began to train after that day. End flashback no jutsu. Our warm-up finished, we began to pair off to spar. Guy and Lee against each other, as I was the only other one Lee could spar against besides Niji, and he didn't show up until at least 7 o'clock. Tenten had only started joining the early morning workouts when I started beating her even worse as time went by, no matter what traps she laid out or what plans she made. And she held it against me that she was here and had to deal with more of Guy and Lee's weirdness. She and Hinata paired off against each other, because Guy had decided that rather than strength they should both focus primarily on improving their speed and flexibility, with only a secondary focus on strength. Having Hinata dodge Tenten's barrage of weaponry, and having Tenten run for her life from Juken strikes was definitely an effective way of training for the two of them. Hinata had come a long way since she first stepped foot on this training ground. Flashback no jutsu. Round 2. 4 days since team assignment. Arriving at training ground 9 once again at 4 in the morning, why do I even bother to sleep? I saw someone waiting there already besides Guy and Lee. She was hunched over as if expecting the world to beat her down for the crime of simply existing. All I could see of her clothes were standard shinobi pants and sandals, and an overlarge white jacket. However, her Heim-style haircut and pupilless eyes let me know exactly who it was. Speaking of, I should work on getting my sensing skills up to par. Hinata-chan, I called out and waved at her excitedly. She immediately perked up and blushed crimson before tentatively waving back at me. I'm glad you decided to come. I continued speaking in an upbeat manner to help put her at ease. Let's go start warming up, then we can have Guy-sensei put together a training plan that will complement your skill set and physique. We can talk as we go and get to know each other a bit better if that's alright with you. My rapid-fire speech seemed to take a minute to sink in before she nodded and started poking her fingers together while blushing, which was unbelievably adorable. Hi and Naruto-kun, that S sounds good to me. IDLL like that a lot. Great. I cheered as I intentionally grabbed her hand in mine and pulled her along behind me as steam began to shoot out of her ears. Ah, the joys of living in an anime. Or am I in a manga? Some combination of the two. Do I have to worry about OVAs and movie plot lines? No. Please don't make me live through the filler episodes. I can't do that twice, sob asterisk. Okay, I'm back. I won't worry about it for now. It didn't take long for Guy and Lee to take to Hinata, and once we all got her confidence up enough to actually try in sparring matches, she was pretty good. She just needed to work on her base parameters some more as she would learn her taijutsu techniques from her family. However, gaining experience against other styles and improving her body's fitness could only help her as a kunoichi. By the end of the first hour she was gassed, but trying hard to push through. I had to sit her down and make sure she drank some water and took a breather. At the end of our early morning session, when Niji showed up, she gave him a polite greeting, thanked Guy, Lee, and me for letting her train with us, and promised she would return when her schedule allowed. I cheerfully waved her off and called out for her not to be bashful about saying hi if she saw me around. End flashback no jutsu. That left me with Ino for a partner. Seeing as it was purely taijutsu, that didn't give me much of a challenge. Therefore I handicapped myself, only letting myself attack once she had attacked me 50 times. Even then I only did something like pushing her over or tripping her. I used the time in between in order to work on minimizing wasted movement, improving my ability to predict my opponent, my reflexes, and my speed. I did all of this while smiling at her and playfully pointing out all the faults in her form. Needless to say, this infuriated her, and made her exert herself ever harder to try and hit me and wipe the smirk off my face. She really lost it when I pulled out my book. I think being Naruto now has rubbed off on me. I don't think I've ever had so much fun messing with someone before. I'm so proud of myself. None of that meant she hadn't improved, because she had. Ino had made tremendous strides in improving herself, but that didn't mean I had to tell her that. After all, if I told her she was getting better, then she would no doubt tease me, and I'd prefer to be the only one doing the teasing until we're at least 15 to 16. That way I can look at them as something other than children, even if I'm a child myself in body, and somewhat in mentality. I'm not a child, I'm a super cool ninja. After all, even though I've lived a cumulative 30+ years, retired Naruto's memories seem to be more prominent than the memories from my last life. Thank God the brain and personality from my former life seem to be just as prominent as Naruto's memories. Makes it a little less awkward when I wake up with a stiffy after dreaming about endurance training with Ino a few years down the road. Never mind, oops, she almost hit me that time. Time to mock her and maybe Sasuke to keep her motivated. Stupid team. Flashback no jutsu. Round 3. 2 weeks after team assignment. Walking over to training ground 10, I thought about how I would convince Asuma to teach me the basics of wind nature manipulation. Coming up blank, I figured I'd just wing it, and I could always blame it on creative genius or say I read it in a book or something. So with a shrug I carried on and came across the expected and somewhat cliché scene. Asuma and Shikamaru were sitting across from each other with a shogi board in between them. Choji was sitting nearby in the shade with a bag of chips, and Ino was complaining. Complaining very loudly and shrilly, although it was practically melodious when compared to Sakura. So she had that going for her. They all looked up as I ambled towards them. Naruto, what are you doing here? Our team is using this training field, so you should look for a different one, Ino said in a slightly surprised and condescending tone. Mama, I lazily flapped a hand at her, to Asuma's amusement. I'm here to talk to Asuma-san about something, then I'll be out of your hair. Hey Shika, Choji, how's it going? I ignored how she flushed and a tick mark appeared on her forehead. Not bad, Naruto. Asuma-sensei has the right idea about training, Choji replied with a wave and a smile in between chips. Troublesome blondes, Shikamaru muttered, then he spoke up. It was going well before you showed up, but I'm sure things are about to become troublesome again now that you're here. Clearing his throat while looking up from the game board, Asuma asked, so Naruto, what did you want to ask me about? Well, I've been told you're the only person currently in the leaf that has a wind chakra nature, and I wanted to ask you if you'd give me any advice on it. I rubbed the back of my head and offered up a slightly foxy smile. Asuma almost dropped the cigarette that was hanging between his lips. What? You're already learning nature transformations? That's a Jonin-level technique. What is Kakashi thinking? I'm in order then. Yes. I know. I'm not sure anyone knows or wants to. But that's not here or there. I'm learning more from Gai-sensei than Bakakashi. He hasn't even taught us anything yet. All we do is take a D rank or two, then do an hour of teamwork exercises, and then he bails. I gesticulated wildly to emphasize my point. He hasn't even mentioned tree climbing yet, and I'm already so far past water walking on my own that it's not even funny. If I waited for him to teach me anything, I'd stunt my growth as a shinobi as badly as the academy teachers did. I finished with a huff. Really? You haven't even learned that much yet? Ino asked in shock, possibly horrified by her Sasuke-kun's lackluster sensei. Well, I have, but I did that on my own. My sensei is either too lazy, or doesn't care enough to teach us anything, I said lightly, but with a hint of disappointment in my voice. They all blinked at me. Naruto, you said you're past water walking, Asuma began. Knowing where he's going with this, I cut him off. Yep, mastered that a while back. Then I mastered it while doing the leaf sticking exercise at the same time. Then I mastered it while doing the leaf sticking and the leaf spinning exercises at the same time. Then I mastered it while fighting with taijutsu for over an hour on top of the water's surface. Then I did that but threw in other jutsu that I know, so yeah. I'm pretty sure I'm well past simple water walking. I blithely ignored the stupefied look on Asuma and Shikamaru's faces, and the confusion on Choji and Ino's. Okay Naruto, can you show me? I just want to make sure you've actually got it all down before I help you with something as advanced as nature manipulation. Asuma, being a reasonable adult, asked me for proof. I shrugged uncaringly, nodded my head, and followed along with the other genin as he led us to a stream not far from their training ground. Without waiting for him to say anything, I simply walked out onto the water as if it was solid and blurred through some hand seals. Well, blurred is relative. It was a blur for anyone around or below Chunin rank, but it was only fairly impressive for someone like Asuma. Wind style, great breakthrough, I said quietly before releasing my overpowered jutsu. I had tried to hold back on the amount of chakra I used, so only a few trees were ripped out of the ground and flung off into the forest. Then I made my favorite cross-shaped hand seal. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Suddenly it wasn't just me standing on the water, but 50 Narutos. All of us turned as one and looked at the deeply shocked Asuma before giving a nice smile and waiting for him to pick his jaw off the ground. His genin didn't fare much better. Ino was taking turns between staring at me like I was something crazy and looking at the damage my jutsu had done to the forest with shock and awe. Choji was frozen with his hand in his bag of chips, his eyes so wide that they were bugging out of his head. Shikamaru took one look at the damage my jutsu did, and walked up to and poked one of my clones before he sighed and looked up at the sky like God was punishing him. You are so damn troublesome. I assume you could have all of your clones do that same jutsu too? That's the point you're trying to get across by making all of them right? Heh. I chuckled wryly. Leave it to you to figure that out, Shika, but I was also showing Asuma-san that I know a B-rank kinjutsu that is known for causing death by chakra exhaustion, and I can make at least 50 clones with it, and I need to mention that that was me holding back on the jutsu. Picking his jaw up off the ground, Asuma rubbed a hand over his face. Fine, I'll teach you about wind manipulation. If you tell me, how on earth were you the dead last of your class? This is ridiculous. Your chakra levels are well over that of a standard jonin, and while your chakra control might need a bit more work, that's only because you have so damn much of it so early. I dragged out the situation as if I had to think about it. I suppose it would be because most people in the village hate me and want to see me fail. It was only after I became an official genin and thereby escaped the civilian council's authority that I actually got access to any information or resources that would let me start improving. I think it's either a major fluke or damn impressive that I managed to get to the level I was at without anything in the way of teaching or help. Asuma paled slightly before nodding his head in understanding. Alright, well, grab a leaf and we'll get you started. I blew him away again when I cut the crap out of the leaf in an instant. Let's go cheating with prior knowledge and hacks no jutsu. He had me do it another 3 times before he just shook his head, lit a cigarette, and told me to keep practicing on a training post, like I hadn't already moved on to trying to cut trees and boulders apart, and to let him know when I've done that. Then he showed me the hien, which completed my objectives for the day. I said my goodbyes and waved as I walked off while celebrating in my head. Plausible explanations for my skills now abound. Mwahaha, I can't wait for the Chunin exams. Oh shit. Hokage Gigi gets killed by Orochi team at the end of them. I guess I've got to do something about that too then. I was so lost in thought that I didn't notice Ino until she grabbed my shoulder, and I reacted by flipping her and twisting her arm around her back while I pushed her face into the dirt. I immediately let go of her and began to apologize. Oh Kami, Ino, I'm sorry, I was lost in thought and just reacted when I felt someone grab me. She slowly pulled herself to her feet while rubbing her shoulder, a grimace on her face. No, it's alright. I should have known better. We are ninja after all. She offered me a slightly embarrassed smile. Man, she's cute, I thought before I rapidly shook my head and returned her smile. As she watched me, her smile turned sly and teasing before she struck a pose. What were you thinking, Naruto? Something about how gorgeous I am? Sorry to say, but I'm taken. Sasuke-kun is the only one for me, even if you are pretty cute now that you're no longer a midget. But your mask is a bit dumb. She threw me a wink to take the sting out of her words. Mama. I like my mask, it adds to my growing mystery. Besides, I like strong girls, and sorry to say, but if I can put you in the dirt, while I was as distracted and my guard was as low as it was then, you're not all that strong. Especially since you're handicapping yourself by dieting. I smiled slightly, but my words obviously bit more than hers did. Blushing, she looked at the ground. I'm not weak. She tried to sound indignant. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. She looked back up at me. For one, I'm sure my team will be training harder now that Asuma-sensei has seen what we're going to be compared to. But I also wanted to ask if you would mind training with me sometime. You've improved really fast from where you were in the academy, and I don't want to be left behind everyone else, especially Sasuke-kun and Forehead. Even if it means giving up on dieting. She finished quietly. Sure, you're welcome to train with me whenever you like, as long as you stop dieting. I start at 4 in the morning at training ground 9 every day. Hinata joins me most days and Tenten is sometimes there, so you'll also have some girls to spar and talk with. At this point I sighed heavily. And I don't think you have to worry about Sakura leaving you behind. She doesn't take being a kunoichi very seriously, and it actually worries me a bit. Sasuke, however? She leaned in looking excited. I'll give him this, he's good. He was definitely the best out of the academy, and he'll be one of the best in a few months. But our sensei isn't teaching us and he pushes everyone else away. There is only so far he can go on his own before he hits a wall, and when he does I hope he accepts help. I said solemnly as she looked at me in confusion. Her mouth opened to defend her Sasuke-kun before she froze as if thinking over what I actually said. After a moment she looked at me appraisingly before nodding. I'll see you tomorrow bright and early then, Naruto. She sent the words over her shoulder as she took off running back to her team, ponytail flapping wildly behind her. End flashback no jutsu. Once 7 rolled around, the girls happily flopped to the ground, drenched in sweat and nearly hyperventilating from lack of oxygen. Meanwhile, Guy had Lee and me drop our weights and spar. I lasted a decent amount of time, but eventually he was just too fast for me to react properly, and I was smashed into the ground, creating yet another crater. I groaned as I hauled myself out of the crater, waving off Lee's apologies and exultations about my growing taijutsu prowess, and collapsing next to the girls. Sadly, I was only taking a moment to recover myself before I had another spar with the trainaholic Lee. What I don't do to grow stronger. Not so fun now, is it? Ino giggled and smirked smugly at me. Now you're the one getting put in the dirt and laid out on your back. Both Hinata and Tenten joined her in her giggles. Ma, I'm having plenty of fun. I joked in return before pulling my mask away from my face. Not enough for anyone to see it, but enough to stick out my tongue. Besides, while I can do just fine on my back, the ladies tell me that they have more fun when they're on their backs. Then I extended my tongue to around 2 feet and wiggled it back and forth. They all immediately fell silent and blushed furiously. That's disgusting, Tenten said, her face distorted to express just how gross it actually was. They certainly don't seem to think so. I replied with more than a little smugness as I let my tongue return to my mouth and replaced my mask. Tenten turned to see what I was talking about. She was just in time to witness Ino and Hinata blushing a fetching scarlet from chest to forehead. Ino's eyes were slightly glazed and she had a stream of drool running down her chin, while Hinata's eyes had changed into swirls. Steam was shooting out of her ears with a whistling sound, and blood was dribbling out of one of her nostrils. It was apparently too stimulating of an image as Hinata's consciousness ultimately gave out with a final spurt of blood that blew her backwards several meters. Ino just seemed to be in her own little world. Sasuke-kun and Naruto. Sasuke-kun is so cool and aloof, but Naruto is tall and ripped, and that tongue, hee. Maybe I'd have them take turns. I snapped my fingers in front of her face a few times before she came back to herself and casually wiped the drool off her chin, and then pretended it had never been there. That was an interesting technique, Naruto. Where'd you learn something like that? She blushed and began to drool again. And can you do the same for other extremities? Other extremities? Tenten cocked her head to the side. Like his arms or legs? Not quite, Ino said with a salacious grin. But I suppose you could consider it a leg if it's big enough. She had to think about it for a moment, but Tenten eventually understood. Gross. She bellowed before she began smacking the back of her head, screaming. Get it out! Get it out of my head! Oh, stop being such a child, you're a shinobi, and what's more, you're a kunoichi. Using our bodies as weapons and leverage is basically in the job description. And despite being a bit of a when he spars, Naruto isn't that bad of a guy to look at or be around. Ino defended herself with a huff. Why thank you, Ino, I didn't know you felt that way. What will Sasuke say when I tell him, and he thinks you're leaving him for someone else? Especially since I think you aren't that bad on the eyes either, for a fragile, little flower. I blew her a kiss, and to my surprise a bright pink heart flew off my hand and towards her in slow spiraling circles. Ino seemed equally surprised and froze. The heart was almost at her cheek before its flight is abruptly halted by a kunai piercing through it. What the fuck was that? Tenten asked with another kunai ready. I don't actually know. I've never done that before. I respond, my eyes still glued on the tiny, little heart that seemed to struggle to complete its journey before giving up the ghost and dissolving into pink sparkles. I have another sensei besides Guy and Bakakashi, and I'm going to blame her for this. Most of the things that go wrong for me these days are her fault anyway, even if she did teach me the tongue thing. I shook my head like a dog shedding water. Who's your other sensei? Ino asked, still focused on where the heart was before it disappeared. The craziest, sexiest, scariest, and did I mention craziest kunoichi in Konoha, Mitarashi Enko. I might not have emphasized how crazy she is enough or how sexy. I sighed and stood to head back into the hell that was sparring in pure taijutsu with Lee. Oh, and Ino? I looked back over my shoulder. Yeah, Naruto? She finally looked away from where the last of the pink sparkles had faded away with a somewhat wistful look on her face. I can use it on my other extremities, but I don't think I'll ever need to. You can ask Hinata about it later. I threw her a wink and walked away. Hinata, who had just returned to consciousness, developed another atomic blush and returned to the land of her fantasies with a gush of blood from her nose. Tenten was crimson and stuttering as she tried to force something to come out of her mouth, but was unable to. Ino looked between the comatose Hinata and me before her eyes widened and darted back to me as if hoping to see, but she had to settle for a view of my amazing ass instead. Yep, I've definitely stepped down the road to corruption and I haven't even met Jiraiya yet. I definitely blame Enko-chan. Flashback no Jutsu Round 4. 2 weeks and 2 days after team assignment. I had finally found someone to teach me how to train my lightning nature, without relying on the vague notion that it has to do with piercing instead of cutting and the concept of discharging. My teacher of choice? The Sandaime Hokage, also known as the Professor. He was supposedly able to use every jutsu from Konoha, which meant every element was under his command. Not to mention I had something to bargain with if he was stubborn. I barged in on him, as was my wont with a peppy "Hey Gigi. Ah, Naruto-kun, you look like you're doing well. What brings you here? Hokage Gigi asked me with his grandfatherly smile. I was hoping you'd be able to help me with learning how to go about managing a lightning chakra nature transformation, beyond imagining my chakra as a very fine point and trying to make it as piercing as possible while imagining the static of lightning. I figured it was best to just lead with what I wanted. There was no way I could hoodwink someone like Hiruzen. If you're at the point where you're learning something like this, Kakashi should be able to help you. So why are you coming to me for help? Gigi asked as he sat back and lit his pipe, smoke spiraling up towards the ceiling. Well, Bakakashi-sensei, I had to pause as he laughed at the nickname, doesn't really spend all that much time teaching me. Besides, I don't think he really knows what level I'm at, except that I'm beyond my teammates and holding back so that they think I'm not that far ahead. I offered him a shrug. Oh? And why would you do that, Naruto? And if Kakashi doesn't know, or think you are ready to learn nature transformations, then why would I approve of you learning it? He is your Jonin-sensei after all. The Sandaime calmly pointed out. I don't want to have to deal with Uchiha-san's jealousy when he sees how fast I've improved, and that's without factoring in the consequence it would have on our already horrendous teamwork. I studied Gigi as I spoke, and I thought he approved of my reasoning, although I couldn't see anything, as his face was completely blank. And I think you'd approve of it because you've always had my best interests at heart, and you probably know that your son, Asuma-sensei, has already taught me why nature chakra transformation exercises. I smiled at Gigi. I was pretty sure I won without having to use my trump card. With a soft sigh, Hiruzen gave in. Very well, Naruto-kun. I'm not sure I like this new, reasonable you. The old you was much easier to deal with. I never imagined I would say that. Oh well, here is how you are supposed to do it. He then proceeded to explain the methods to me over the course of the next few minutes before we decided to grab lunch together. We ran into Konohamaru along the way, so I sent a clone to train and play with my minion and his friends. After lunch, Hokage Gigi sent me on my way and I hurried towards the Forest of Death, my go-to spot for secret training. I spawned 600 clones and assigned 100 to Wind Nature Transformation, 300 to Lightning Nature Transformation, 50 to Taijutsu Katas, 50 to work on my sensing capabilities, 50 to work on my hand seals, and the final 50 to work on my Fuinjutsu skills. Personally, I began to exercise once again. My QB enhanced Uzumaki healing factor having already restored much of my energy, stamina, and muscle strength from my grueling morning training with Guy, Lee, Hinata, and Ino. Side note, Tenten may be joining the group soon as she's seen how fast they are improving and I keep beating her worse and worse every time we spar. In the midst of my 12th set of strength building exercises I detected something close by. Something that was trying to remain hidden and out of sight. I couldn't get any more from it as my sensing capabilities were still new and underdeveloped. Being where I was, there was only one person it could possibly be. That left the question of whether I wanted to acknowledge and then meet the person in question. With a sigh of slight sorrow for what would inevitably result in the end of my peaceful and secluded training, perhaps forever, I spoke. I know you're there. I may not be much of a sensor yet, but I can at least tell that you're in the area. I called out to the air. You're an interesting little gaki, aren't you? My visitor asked cordially as she dropped out of the trees and sauntered up to me. She was just a bit taller than me, probably around 5 feet 5 inches to my 5 feet 4 inches. She had striking purple hair, smooth, milk chocolate eyes, and creamy skin, but her most attention-garnering traits were her. Now it wasn't just that they were extraordinarily large, or that they were supernaturally perky for their size. No, it was that the fishnet shirt she wore did little to nothing to obscure them, leaving that to the tenuous coverage of her open, tan trench coat. I suppose, although I really don't think I'm all that little. But you're a shameless tease and a pervert, aren't you, miss? I shot back at her with a slight grin. She grinned back at me and just the tiniest bit of bloodlust and crazy came through. Why yes I am. I'm the irrepressible, super sexy, currently single, snake bitch of Konoha, MIT. I cut her off as she was hitting her stride, causing her to sweat drop. Midarashi Anko-san. The devil of Dango, the femme fatale, the kinkiest kunoichi, the sexiest slut in Konoha. Yep, I've heard of you. Nice to make your acquaintance. I offered her with a nice smile. Anko seemed taken aback by my knowledge of her and the various monikers I mentioned. She got over it quickly and puffed up with pride. So what's your name, Gaki? And what are you doing way out here by my stomping grounds with all your friends? She seemed to have just realized that all the other blondes running around were in fact shadow clones. The names Uzumaki Naruto, village pariah, dead last of his class, demon child, that child, orphan, QB brat, and apparently Gaki. Among other less pleasant names, at your service, milady. I performed a dramatic bow. And I am out here training with a stupid amount of shadow clones because I don't want to have to explain how I can do all of this to some people. I am supposed to be a dobe, or at least a weakling after all. I shouldn't trample on the village's hard work to keep me stupid and inept. They put in a lot of effort after all, it would be rude to disregard that, I said ironically. She just looked at me for a second as if unsure of how to proceed. Then she collected herself and grinned at me again. Well, don't we make a pair? She asked happily. But are you sure it's fine to mention the QB to me? I could be one of the people who hate you. Anko slid in close to me and pushed her up in front of my face. Blushing slightly, I blatantly took a nice long look at her cleavage, appreciating her exceptional assets. Well, as long as those two like me, I think I'm good. She burst out laughing and busted a gut, ending up leaning on me to keep herself upright. Not that I minded, I was paying more attention to her lethal weapons pressing against me. You know what, Gaki? I like you, you've got guts, and a few more years and my girls here just might take a liking to you too. So here's what's going to happen. Anko was all smiles. I couldn't help but think it was a nice smile. I'm going to let you train here, Blondie-kun. I may even throw in some help now and then if you ask nicely. Her smile turned a bit predatory, and the crazy flared in her eyes at this point. In return, you're going to help me with a few things, and you get the privilege to treat yours truly, your very own, unbelievably sexy, Ankone to Dango. She finished with a cheer, her eyes daring me to say no. I smiled at her. Sure thing, Anko-chan, as long as we can have ramen every once in a while. I studiously avoid calling her my sister, if we ever hooked up, and that is a possibility considering how estranged we both are from most of the village. It would be really awkward. Or it could be hot, really, really hot. What? I'm talking about boinking with Enko. Of course it's going to be kinky. Good. One question before we start. Why do you have a mask like Hataki, Blondie-kun? Enko asked with cheer, snapping me out of my hormone-powered delusion. Well, Bakakashi is my Jonin sensei, so I mostly wear it to mess with him. However, it does lend a certain mystique when people don't remember what you look like, and it helps hide my facial expressions. I volunteered easily as she once again draped herself all over me, sending me to hormone heaven, while she cackled at my nickname for Kakashi. Wait a minute. Start? Start what? Say Enko-chan? I asked hesitantly, fearing I knew what was to come. Yes, Blondie-kun? And it's Enko-ne, repeat after me. Ankone. Her arms had snaked around me, and while I was relishing in the feel of her chest squashed against mine, I was also starting to worry about what was to come. I know I'm really going to regret asking, but what are we starting? I asked as I subtly leaned into Enko-chan to get a better feel of her, causing her grin to widen until it almost split her face. I'm glad you asked, Blondie-kun. She leaned in and her tongue ran up my neck and caressed my ear before she blew into it gently. It's a fun, little game we're going to play together. Just the two of us all by ourselves. She was purring into my ear, each word dripping with sexuality, and even though I knew better I was reacting to it, I liked to call it death tag. I couldn't help but moan at her sheer sexuality. I was stiff as a bow's staff and pressed up against her stomach, even as I groaned at the hell I knew was coming my way. You really like your new Enko-ne, don't you, Blondie-kun? She teased me with a grin as she rubbed herself against my front, almost driving coherent thought out of my simple, horny, teenage mind. I didn't know my Blondie-kun would be so perverted, but that's okay, you're cute when you moan for me. I wonder how cute you'll be when you scream in agony for me. And Enko had descended fully into batshit insane mode. Or was it snake shit insane? No matter, as either way she whipped out a kunai and cut a line in my cheek while grinding against me and violating my wound with her tongue. Is it wrong that she turned me on even more by doing that? I let her know too by grunting at the pain before I wrapped my arms around her waist, pulled her closer to me and brazenly groped her ass. Does Blondie-kun like it when I play rough? Enko mocked, but I could tell that she was surprised by my actions. Not to mention turned on. Yes. I nodded rapidly. I like it very, very much. However, I'm going to start running now. I used a hand seal-less substitution jutsu to replace myself with a quickly formed clone and took off running. I leapt over the fence and disappeared into the forest of death. Oh, Blondie-kun, Enko whispered seductively to my clone, we will have so much fun together. Then she shoved her kunai into his chest. Every single one of my clones flinched, clutching their chests, and developed massive erections at the same time. What Enko didn't realize was that she now had an undefeatable argument that she was indeed the sexiest, and craziest, kunoichi in Konoha. No one else had ever given 600 people a stiffy at the same time while killing what was essentially them. Run, Blondie-kun! Enko roared with bloodthirsty glee as she followed me into her forested domain. Run for your Enko-ne! End flashback no jutsu. After wrapping up my spars with Lee, I limped my way to Training Ground 7. Sitting down in the branches of a tree to avoid having to interact with either of my teammates, I pulled out my book on intermediate sealing and began to read as I recovered. 30 minutes after I arrived, Kakashi showed up. So I jumped down from my spot in the tree and walked over. I have a special mission for us today. Kakashi seemed happy about this mission, too happy. So, we're finally going after the infamous Tora? I asked, dearly hoping to ruin his fun at our expense. Silver hair drooping with the rest of his body, he complained. Why do you have to take all of the fun out of being a Jonin sensei, Naruto? And how do you always know about this stuff anyway? Mama, I wouldn't say I take all the fun out of it. I mean, you could teach us something after all, I said with a lazy, careless shrug, still reading my book. Kakashi responded with a similar shrug, not pointing out how I neglected to mention where I got my information. Well, come on then, might as well get this over with. Kakashi made it clear that I couldn't use shadow clones to help catch Tora, and that we would need to work together to succeed in a reasonable amount of time. We broke the record for catching Tora. While we did work together, I also cheated. I made seal-less shadow clones as we made our way to Gigi's office to pick up our mission and used my developing sensory skills to pinpoint the damn cat. I led my team to her with the excuse of a gut feeling. We surrounded her, and I swooped in and grabbed her by the scruff of her neck. One Enko patented I'll gut you, bathe in your blood, and use your organs as bath toys. Smile backed by my KI, and she docilely allowed me to carry her back to Gigi's office and even pet her a bit. All the way back Kakashi cried anime tears and complained about me ruining everything while dark storm clouds rained on his head. When we walked in, Gigi and Irika-sensei were shocked to say the least, especially at how well behaved the demon cat was with me. Even when Tora was being smothered and suffocated by the daimyo's wife. However, immediately after they left my presence, Tora made a break for it again, just as we were being offered another mission. Or you could catch Tora again? Hiruzen proposed with a quiet chuckle. Come on, Gigi, I said tiredly. We've done so many of these D ranks. Hell, I've even been sending shadow clone squads to do more under our team name each day, so we probably have the most D ranks completed by any genin team, rookie or otherwise. Irika-sensei checked the listings and blanched. Wow. Why yeah, far and away the most. He recovered quickly though. However, that doesn't mean you're ready to take a higher level mission. You have to work your way up like everyone else. Yeah, Irika-sensei. I waved at him lazily before turning back to Hiruzen. So Gigi, what do you say? I smiled at him winningly as Sakura and Sasuke looked on interestedly. Both of my teammates were just as sick of D-rank missions as I was. Well, maybe not quite that much. I don't know, Naruto, maybe I can find a simple C-rank mission for your team. He began before lifting a finger to cut off any celebration. If your sensei approves. Kakashi looked up from his book and I smiled. No. Turning to me, his eye smile grew. You ruin my joy and I ruin yours. Then he turned back to his book. There you have it. The decision is ultimately up to your Jonin sensei, Hiruzen said, although he was disappointed by Kakashi's reason to decline the mission. What if I tell you the secret to defeating paperwork? I offered while motioning to the hills of forms towering from their places on Gigi's desk. Was it just me, or had the amount somehow grown since we had been talking? What? Hiruzen shrieked louder and more shrilly than Sakura would ever manage. You know the secret? Truly? I can finally vanquish my most hated, eternal foe? The Sandame's eyes were burning with desire and unholy glee. If you can gift me with this knowledge, I will let you take any C-rank mission you desire. And when the time comes, I'll let you pick your first B-rank and A-rank missions. Please tell your Gigi, Naruto-kun. I beg of you. It was more than a little disconcerting to see the Sandame Hokage, the professor, and god of shinobi on his knees, bargaining with a mere genin. Mama, no need to go so far as to kneel, Gigi. I reached down to pull him to his feet, and he headed back to his desk. Did the paperwork stacks grow again? Are the ANBU doing this? Is paperwork alive in this world? Is Hagoromo using creation of all things to make more of it? I refocused on Hiruzen, raised one finger, and said two words. Shadow clones. Hiruzen froze for a moment before he began to giggle like a little girl. Shadow clones. Fucking shadow clones. That's how he did it. The giggles shifted into deranged cackling. So much for the famed professor. Stupid Hiruzen. Stupid, stupid, stupid. But now I'm free. Shadow clone jutsu. 3 Gigis appeared and began to systematically demolish the waves of paperwork while muttering and cackling to themselves. Clearing his throat, the Hokage attempted to regain his obliterated dignity. Thank you for that, Naruto-kun. You have no idea how grateful I am. We have an idea. Everyone else, besides his clones, deadpanned in unison. So what type of C rank would you like, Naruto? Hiruzen inquired. What do you have in the way of escort missions? I asked with a smirk hidden behind my mask. After ignoring the attempts of my teammates to get my attention and Bakakashi to glare through my head, I cheerfully selected the wave escort mission. I mused aloud, explaining my supposed reasoning for my choice. Well, a low-priority escort mission is perfect for us. Bakakashi doesn't have to put in much effort. It's not very likely that we will encounter more than bandits, or perhaps a low-ranked missing nin, if we are especially unlucky, and he can take care of anyone below a rank easily. I jerked my chin at the Cyclops, who seemed torn between beaming at me for praising him or glaring at me for ruining his fun. In addition, Haruno-san, Uchiha-san, and I not only get a chance to prove ourselves on a slightly higher-ranked mission, but also acquire invaluable experience outside of Konoha. We'll take this one. I decided with a firm nod. Well reasoned? Hiruzen intoned with a solemn nod, still trying to salvage his ruined dignity. No one was buying it. Turning to Irika, he gave his order. Alright, call in Tazuna-san. Then a few minutes of awkward silence later, he stumbled in. Drunk as a skunk and twice as smelly, Tazuna, the bridge builder and hope of Nami no Kuni, the land of the waves. I have to say I was a bit excited to see Sasuke and Sakura's reactions to him. What the dash? He exclaimed before belching slightly. A bunch of snot-nosed brats are supposed to guard me? He punctuated his question with a sloppy gesticulation using a half-empty sake bottle. An emo, pretty boy who looks like he was sodomized recently, and a little girl who looks like she'd be a better stalker than a ninja with pie is that really pink hair. Sasuke's face twisted in offended arrogance, making him look like he was constipated as a result of his recent sodomization, and Sakura had turned into actual stone, jaw literally on the floor. It was really kind of cool to see. 1 second she was flesh and the next stone. Well, I suppose the blonde at least looks the part, and isn't such a munchkin, and the scarecrow seems decent. Alternating between scratching his beard and ass, Tazuna shrugged as if to say Kakashi and I were fine by him. I am Master Bridge Builder Tazuna and I must return to my country safely. I'm building a bridge there that will change our world, and I expect you to get me there safe even if it means giving up your life. He stared at us seriously, though the drunken blush and moderate to severe slurring of his words lessened the effect somewhat. Mama Tazuna-san, no need to be so morbid. We'll get you there safely. Bakakashi here, despite being a lazy, good-for-nothing sensei, is one of the top ninjas in the village. Not to mention Uchiha-san was Rookie of the Year. Haruno-san can kill grown men with just her voice. And I am pretty strong myself, you know. I gave Tazuna an eye smile to help reassure him of our competence. Kakashi eye smiled at me and I had a feeling that I was forgiven my earlier trespasses. Sasuke looked haughty and arrogant as if it was only right that I acknowledged him for receiving a meaningless title. And Sakura was still stone, but seemed to have cracked a bit, and was being rained on by tiny cartoon storm clouds. Faye. Good enough for me. When do we leave? The drunk managed to get out before attempting to drown himself with his sake bottle. Hokage-sama, I would request that you order us to leave tomorrow at 7 in the morning. Sharp. I cast my eyes at Kakashi to make it clear why I was doing this. It will let Tazuna-san have a nice night and sober up for the journey. Let us pack and prepare ourselves, and by your order Bakakashi will have to show up on time to leave. Gigi just looked at me for a second before smiling and going along with my idea. Helping him with his paperwork seemed to have gone a really long way in getting into his good books. Kakashi-kun, you are ordered to be packed, ready to leave, and present wherever your team decides to meet at the appointed time of 7 tomorrow morning. You will then leave for your mission without delay or deliberate sabotage. Hiruzen smirked at Kakashi, whose eye was wide and filled with horror and betrayal at the thought that he wouldn't be able to be late. As we all left, the Sandaime pulled out his own copy of Ika Ika and thought to himself, maybe you're not so far from taking this hat from me after all, Naruto-kun. Looking at his shadow clones and the now almost overflowing completed bin of paperwork, he compared it to the rapidly depleting bin holding his remaining work. Hiruzen couldn't help but think that maybe holding on for a few more years wouldn't be so bad now that he knew the Yondaime's secret. Maybe now he could get out and sneak some training in. His skills had certainly suffered from neglect. That sounded like a good idea to him after he finished this chapter. Makino-chan, you're such a naughty little minx. Shinobi throughout the Leaf suddenly began crying as they felt their respect for authority figures shatter. Leaf Kunoichi suddenly felt the compulsive need to visit the Hokage and bring many sharp objects with them. The next day, 7 o'clock sharp, my team, a massively hungover Tazuna, and I were already leaving the towering walls of Konoha behind us. Kakashi was reading his book and complaining about having run into a black cat, which would surely bring us bad luck, and old, feeble ladies who needed help with groceries that he was prevented from providing. Sasuke was keeping a wary eye on our surroundings as he took the point position, hoping to see some action. He would see some, but that was all he would do. I mean, I did have to assert my dominance over all things team, didn't I? Even if I didn't have the same adversarial relationship with him as retard Naruto originally did. He was still a team. Sakura, having recovered from her time as a statue, was obviously staring at Sasuke with hearts in her eyes and drool on her chin. Fangirlitis is a horrible thing, and I would never wish it on any man except Bakakashi. I really seem to have developed a grudge against him for not teaching me anything and just being a terrible sensei. Maybe it has something to do with the Naruto part of me now knowing that he's my Tusan student and that he basically abandoned me to run off and drown in guilt instead of manning up and helping a child in need of him. Meh, I don't care enough to really figure it out at the moment. Everyone but me had a backpack, and both my fellow genin mocked me about forgetting my supplies. Kakashi, however, took a look at my sealing book and seemed to understand and approve of what I had done. Little did the idiots know that I had everything I needed tucked away inside sealing scrolls that I made for myself, making it so that I didn't need to carry a heavy and bulky backpack. Heh, suckers. The first time we made camp and I pulled out a tiny little scroll and unsealed a hammock, blankets, and various other comforts, my teammates' eyes popped out of their heads. This continued on more or less the same for the better part of 2 days, and it was late morning during the second day that I finally saw what I was waiting for. A puddle! Yep, it was time to use my future knowledge to cheat again. Mwahaha, man, I love knowing how things will happen before they actually do. It makes taking advantage of them so much easier. That's why I'll try not to stray all that far from canon, although I won't stick to it exclusively if I see a way to benefit from changing something. Sasuke walked by the puddle without so much as a glance. Some elite he was, ha ha ha. I would have noticed the puddle and sensed the enemies within even if I didn't know they were there. Sakura and Tazuna followed obliviously behind the Uchiha. Kakashi gave it a lazy glance before looking away, pretending not to have noticed anything wrong, and I kept it in sight out of the corner of my eye. When the demon brothers attacked, it went down exactly as it did in canon. Up to the point when they finished killing Kakashi. Then it all went to shit for them. Immediately I turned and threw several kunai at each of them to keep their attention occupied. However, they were really unfortunate. They attempted to block them with their clawed gauntlets and continued charging towards us. I had planned on capturing both of them alive, but wind chakra-laced kunai have a tendency to cut through whatever is in their path. Needless to say, things didn't go exactly as I planned. That is especially the case when you have shadow clones throwing said wind chakra-laced kunai as well. Yep, I had made use of Hack's no jutsu again to help with scouting and to practice my still relatively average sensing skills. I had used wind chakra to enhance my kunai's cutting power because I didn't know how much I would need to take down a chunin. I had been training quite a bit, but had no one to truly compare to besides in taijutsu, and Lee still beat me most of the time in that. And in the spirit of training and fairness, I never used anything that the handicapped boy couldn't, i.e. nin or genjutsu. The first brother made to block the kunai going for his throat and avoid the others that passed by each side and above him to prevent him from moving anywhere without having to sacrifice positioning. The kunai pierced straight through his gauntlet and then his throat, killing him in an instant, and continuing on to go through another tree. Even as the first brother's body fell lifeless to the ground, the other brother was caught in the exact same situation. He, however, was lucky enough that the kunai aimed for his throat struck his gauntlet at an odd angle, and it was just enough to deflect the kunai into and through his shoulder. The force of the blow and the crimson spray of his lifeblood spinning him around and allowing the kunai my clones had thrown to successfully pierce his knees and blow right through them as if they were wet tissue. As he hit the dirt of the road screaming in agony and loss, my clones were able to quickly restrain him, not that he was in any shape to go anywhere regardless. It hadn't been more than 3 seconds from beginning to end. However, Sasuke was still in the act of running forward to engage the enemy nin. It took him another moment or two to realize that I had already defeated both of them and killed one of them. Sakura still was frozen with wide eyes, and Tazuna was crouched down with shock and fear on his face. I took all of that in a blink. Then I calmly walked to the edge of the path. Kakashi-sensei, permission to have a momentary lapse in composure due to my first kill? I spoke to the air in a calm tone. However, even I noticed the slight tremor in my voice. A hand gently rested on my shoulder and I didn't even look, already knowing whom it belonged to. Go ahead, Naruto, let it out. The tone was serious for once, no sign of our playful, lazy, vengeful sensei held within. I nodded once, bent over slightly and ripped my mask off my face before throwing up the light breakfast I had today in anticipation of this very occurrence. The heaves racked my body until nothing but yellowish spout came from my empty stomach, and soon after even that was expelled. Killing in my old world was something that didn't happen often and certainly not around anyone except criminals and soldiers, barring accidents. I knew as a shinobi I was a soldier now, and so I had been trying to prepare for this. I thought I would be ready. I mean, part of me grew up as Naruto and suffered all kinds of fucked up shit. The other part of me was pretty desensitized to violence, at least I thought so. Video games, you know? It still took me by surprise. How easy it was to kill. I expected to be revolted, retard Naruto certainly would have been. I expected to be stunned and in shock, and I suppose I was a bit, but nothing unmanageable. I mean, I monologue in my head all the time, so this wasn't anything totally unusual. I expected to feel it as my soul was stained and a piece of me, perhaps the child in me, had died. I had prepared to go through self-loathing and have to lean on Kakashi for wisdom and support. Instead, I felt nothing. It was easy. Killing was just so damn easy. That's how I knew that any hope of following canon, beyond as a very general guideline, was just not going to happen. In the anime, the manga, whatever you preferred, Naruto didn't kill. He simply didn't do it. Hell, he didn't even take part in killing someone up until Kakuzu and Haiden, excluding Haku and Zabuza. But those two weren't his fault. He did everything he could to keep them alive. That was on Kakashi and Gato. I had just killed, and only my revulsion at my lack of response to the act caused any response at all. And that same revulsion was simply a conditioned response by half of what now made me, well, me. I knew it wouldn't happen again next time, and it would only get easier each time until killing not bothering me no longer bothered me at all. Spitting the nasty taste of half-digested food and bitter bile from my mouth and rinsing with a canteen of water let me collect myself. I took a deep breath and accepted what I had done. Raising my mask back into place, Kakashi's comforting and solid hand still clasped on my shoulder, I prepared myself to face my team and move towards the future. I couldn't afford to falter at this point, especially when I hadn't even made it past the beginning of my story. I stood and turned back to my team and Tazuna, giving Kakashi a quick nod of silent thanks before I addressed everyone. Sorry about that, first time killing anyone, I promise it won't happen again. My chipper tone and eye smiles seemed to freak Tazuna and Sakura out for some reason. Sasuke was looking at me with wide eyes and a hint of something between respect and fear in his gaze before he regained his typically stoic demeanor. Kakashi simply squeezed my shoulder and I smiled back before making his way to my clones and their prisoner, who had been knocked unconscious and had his wounds cauterized by Kakashi's own shadow clone. Funny, I hadn't noticed him making one. All my clones saluted Kakashi before looking at me. Seeing my nod of acknowledgement, they returned to the trees and quickly disappeared from sight. Tazuna and Genin waited in silence as Kakashi interrogated the remaining demon brother. Sakura kept stealing little glances at me, a conflicted look on her face, when she thought I wasn't looking. As if she wasn't sure if she wanted to deride and scream at me, or try to comfort me. Maybe she was coming around? Probably not, but I could hold out hope that she would after this mission. After all, she had already seen death close up, and would soon be meeting someone far more terrifying than the two I killed. Yes, I said too. There was no way the second demon brother was going to live through his wounds, and even if he did, then he would be retrieved by Leaf ANBU and sent to TNI and tortured before he died. Basically, he was already dead. He just hadn't realized it yet. Tazuna seemed caught between shock and fear, not surprising considering he had almost died, watched a 12 to 13-year-old kill someone nearly effortlessly, and probably understood that his goose was cooked. Kakashi was on to him now. Sasuke was keeping an eye on our surroundings, probably trying to spot my clones, while keeping track of me out of the corner of his eye. Was that out of respect and or concern? Nah, probably out of jealousy of my power, maybe some grudging respect, and a hint of wariness. Me? Well, I was once again imitating Kakashi, and had buried my nose in my bingo book. I had to be able to play off any knowledge about Zabuza and what was to come in the future after all. I was definitely not distracting myself from the lack of guilt or remorse over my first kill and the guilt that came with not feeling anything except slightly disappointed that Chunin were so easy to kill. Even if the kill happened to be by virtue of surprise and them underestimating me. Would Zabuza be as easy to kill? Would every shinobi be this easy if I let them underestimate me? That couldn't be the case, right? I mean, A and S rank shinobi would have to be good enough to recover and save themselves from death if the gap between us was big enough. Granted, I was probably close to, if not A, B rank shinobi in skill at this point, and the demon brothers couldn't have been higher than C rank. Still, I couldn't help but feel that until I made a name for myself it really might all be this easy. I guess I can't complain, especially since most of the people I will be killing will be after my life anyway. It was only a few minutes later Kakashi walked back over. Sorry about letting you all think I was killed, but I needed to see who they were targeting. His eye narrowed as he looked at Tazuna. Something you want to mention, Tazuna-san? Please help me. Tazuna immediately fell to his knees and groveled pathetically. There is a man who wants me dead, so I can't finish building the bridge. He's choking Wave to death in his clutches and this bridge is our only hope to survive. You have to help me save my country, please. So you knew that this mission would be higher than C rank, but chose to advertise it as such regardless. Probably because you can't afford to pay for more because of whomever the man strangling your country is. Well, I can't blame you for trying to get help, but for putting my cute, little Genin in danger and lying to my village and Hokage, I am beyond furious. We're heading home. This mission just escalated to at least a B rank mission. We're not equipped to handle this. Kakashi was ruthless with his words, his tone lazy but somehow severe. No, please. Gato will be the death of us all, my daughter and grandson, the villagers, our entire country and way of life. You're my only hope, our only hope. Please, please, please. Tazuna had broken down, begging as tears streamed freely down his face. Sakura looked at the man with pity, clearly swayed by his plight. Sasuke also seemed affected, but still remained mostly neutral. That was surprising considering that the man was begging us to save his family, something that I was sure would help turn Sasuke to his side. Kakashi, however, was unaffected. No. Especially not since you said the one who wants you dead is Gato. I'm assuming you mean the billionaire tycoon Gato. Anyone with that much money can afford to hire much better than the Demon Brothers. The next ninja we come across won't be a Chunin, but a Jonin like myself, and my genin aren't ready for that. The Silver Cyclops shook his head with a sigh. This mission is over, we're heading back to Konoha. But are we really going to leave him, and an entire country, to die? Sakura seemed incredulous, eyes flicking back and forth between Kakashi, Tazuna, and Sasuke, trying to get a grip on the situation. Yes, it isn't our mission to protect him from missing Nin, we aren't equipped for it, and he lied about the specifics of the mission. That put all of us at risk, regardless of his reasons for doing so. The Scarecrow retorted gravely. I believe we should continue the mission. I put forth my own opinion without looking up from my book. If I can take down 2 Chunin-level shinobi without any effort and no prior warning beyond noticing a puddle where there shouldn't be one, then I think we can safely say that I'm at least a Chunin-level shinobi. Sasuke is also probably around low Chunin level, and while Sakura is firmly in the Genin level, she is at least a solid Genin. I sighed and scratched the top of my head. Then we have you, Kakashi-sensei. Even if a Jonin-level shinobi shows up, we have the advantage. At the least I should be able to keep us from becoming a liability so that you can focus on the fight. This seems to be a good thing for us. I said as I gestured to my fellow genin who were looking at me as if I was an alien, or a sadomasochistic silver-haired Jashinist moving on. We get to experience fighting or at least witnessing a fight on a completely different level, help and put a neighbor of Konoha in our debt, and understand that a mission is not always at its seams and learn to look underneath the underneath. With a sigh, Kakashi seemed to accept that I might have a point, even as Tazuna prostrated himself to me crying his thanks. Well, let's have a vote then. We are a team after all. Kakashi reluctantly compromised. I vote we return to Konoha. HN, forward. Sasuke didn't even bother with sentences. His Uchiha pride wouldn't let him back down. I think we should help them as well. Sakura followed Sasuke's choice and her easily appealed to conscience. I need to beat that out of her at some point. I vote to continue the mission. However, Kakashi-sensei, you have a summoning contract if I'm not mistaken. I put forth my 2 cents, or is that yen now, while adding a question. Yes, I have the summoning contract for the ninja dogs of Konoha. Why do you ask, Naruto? He tilted his head slightly and looked at me quizzically. I don't know why he was acting like an idiot, but he had to know where I'm going with this, didn't he? Perfect, then you should send an update on the situation back to Hokage-sama along with our decision to continue the mission. Perhaps request backup and a retrieval of the remaining demon brother, just in case. I made my second real change to the mission from canon. First was killing the demon brothers, this time I'm playing it smart and calling for help. Good thinking, Naruto. Okay, as we seem to be continuing the mission, everyone should take a minute to collect themselves and prepare while I send off my summon. Kakashi pricked his thumb with a kunai before going through the hand seals fast enough that I only managed to form a guess as to what they were. Kuchio's no jutsu. As soon as his palm pressed against the ground, there was a puff of white smoke. Hey Kakashi, came the surprisingly deep voice of Pakken. And by God, was he adorable. Pakken, I need you to take a message to the Hokage for me. Tell him that Team 7's mission has been raised to a B rank, possibly an A rank depending on what happens next. We will be continuing on the mission, but request additional backup of at least Tokubetsu Jonin level. Kakashi drawled in his usual lazy manner, which was an odd juxtaposition with the serious words he was speaking. Got it. I'll get that done, see ya, Kakashi. Pakken took off back towards Konoha with a nod of his tiny head. Hopefully our reinforcements would arrive before Zabuza did. If not, I was confident that Kakashi and I could take him. I just had to make sure that we didn't actually kill him. I had decided that I wanted him to either join Konoha or survive to help provide for the Misa bloodline rebellion. Anything I can do to mess with Obito and Madara, I will do. The end of the series battles were no joke, and hundreds, if not thousands, died in minutes. That's without mentioning Kaguya, Mother Crazy herself. That was far into the future at this point though. It was best I focus on the here and now. Speaking of, I'd better remove my weights in preparation for Zabuza's arrival. There was still no sign of our backup as we entered Wave. All around us there was only fog, water, and the great bridge Tizuna was building. Everyone was silent as we left the man and boat that had smuggled us into Nami no Kuni, trying to find anything out of place. The fog had cleared as we moved away from the sea and the sun was shining. My teammates had also let down their guards. As we were nearing Tizuna's house, my clones picked something up with their sensing skills and one dispelled to alert me. I instantly threw a kunai into the bush where I was directed, knowing what we'd find. Sakura let out a startled squawk, and everyone jumped and looked my way, kunai at hand. I simply went to retrieve my kunai and came back with a terrified snow rabbit. Sakura looked like she wanted to berate me, but thought better of it. She was probably remembering how I embarrassed her during our spar, or that I had my first kill recently. I looked straight at Kakashi, ignoring everyone else. It's the wrong color, meaning it was raised inside. Kawarimi. His eye widened and he yelled out, "Get down!" Luckily I was already pulling Sakura and Tizuna to the ground before he even finished his first word. He and Sasuke both hit the dirt in time for a giant buzzsaw of screaming, metal, death to pass over all of our heads. The sword, because it was a sword despite its ridiculous size, finished its flight by burying its blade into a tree and a form landed on its handle. Momochi Zabuza, Demon of the Mist, a rank missing nin from Kirigakure. Master of the silent assassination technique, my bingo book says you have quite the bounty. Why is someone like you working for someone like Gato? I spoke in a bored tone before anyone else could. Besides a few short, speculative glances thrown my way, everyone kept their eyes on Zabuza. Heh, not bad kid. You've done your homework and you know who my employer is, but why I'm working for him doesn't matter to you. Leave the bridge builder and go, or you'll all die here. Zabuza looked over his shoulder as he delivered his ultimatum in a growl. You know we can't do that. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, protect Tizuna. I'll need to focus solely on him if I want to survive. We surrounded Tizuna while Kakashi slowly lifted his headband off his hidden eye. Kakashi of the Sharingan, it's an honor that you're already pulling out your trump card in order to fight me. Zabuza growled out. However, it means nothing if you can't see me. Water style, hiding in the mist rose up from the ground, thick and ominous, and soon obscured Zabuza and our surroundings from view. That was when his Ki hit us. It was suffocating. I could feel death breathing behind me. I could feel it stealing up upon me and slowly ripping my life from my body, making it impossible to breathe. I abruptly realized that I wasn't breathing and desperately released my own Ki in the hopes of mitigating the oppressive feeling of my own mortality. Thankfully it worked to an extent, and I was able to suck in a gasping breath. However, even then I was severely shaken and no longer worried that killing a rank and above shinobi would be anywhere near easy. I didn't know if the Ki affected me so much because I had never experienced it to this extent before, or because our levels were far more different than I had thought. The rest of my team besides Kakashi was shaking in fear and Sasuke's kunai was inching towards his own throat until Kakashi made his dramatic promise to not let his comrades, us, die. It would have been much more reassuring if I didn't know that his last team of comrades did die on him. You shouldn't make promises you can't keep. Zabuza snarled with laughter in his voice. 8 points to choose from. Larynx, spine, liver, lungs, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, and heart. Now which should I choose? Knowing what was coming, I was already moving by the time Zabuza appeared in the middle of our formation. It's over! He crowed, but I had already buried my kunai in his throat as Kakashi sped towards us. The Zabuza I had stabbed dissolved into water, showing it was a water clone, even as another Zabuza appeared to my left, ready to strike me down. I avoided being bisected by Kubikura Bocho by throwing myself to my right and rolling into a defensive stance, presenting my right side and making myself as small a target as possible, as Kakashi stabbed this new Zabuza in the gut while he was busy trying to see what color my insides were. As that Zabuza also turned into water, revealed to be another water clone, yet again Zabuza materialized behind Kakashi. Die! He bellowed even as his sword screamed towards the silver-haired Jonin. This one actually managed to separate my sensei from most of his torso and his legs. Sakura screamed in terror and denial even as Kakashi's body dispersed into even more water, revealing him to be a water clone as well. He then appeared behind Zabuza with a kunai held to his throat. It was a good try, but not good enough. Now it's over. Kakashi spoke calmly, brimming with self-assurance. Impressive. You managed to copy my water clone, but you'll need to do better to trick me. Zabuza laughed condescendingly as Kakashi's eyes widened, even as the Zabuza in front of him dissolved into water once more. Kakashi tried to turn and defend himself, but knew instantly that he wouldn't be able to make it in time. A distinct lack of high-ranking missions, dedicated training, and conditioning had caused his edge to dull, and he'd lost a step that he couldn't afford to lose. However, I knew what was coming, even if there were more water clones than I thought there would be. And damn, there were a lot of water clones running around. So before the only person who was stronger than me and wanted me to stay safe was punted like football, I was already moving. Manipulating my chakra in a way I had done thousands of times, through my clones, I gathered it in my right hand and instantly converted it to Wine Nature Chakra while shaping it into a keen edge. Slashing my hand from above my head down to my waist, I unleashed my technique. Beast-tearing palm, a vertical wave of wind-natured chakra formed with the sole purpose of tearing whatever might be unfortunate enough to make contact with it into tiny, blood-splattered pieces was sent roaring at Zabuza. He barely managed to react in time and prevent the loss of his leg, but it still managed to leave a deep gash on his foot as he whipped the appendage back and away from my technique and sensei. GRH! He screamed through clenched teeth, suppressing the undoubtedly excruciating pain of having all the skin and muscle on the bottom of his foot shorn off. Blood began to gush from the wound even as he tried to recover his balance. Kakashi recovered first. Moving in for the kill, his Sharingan eye was blazing with the desire to protect his comrades as the Tomos spun wildly. I followed quickly on his heels. Zabuza managed to fend off Kakashi's first blow, but while he was preoccupied, I ducked under his giant blade and delivered a devastating slice to his hamstring on the opposite side of his previous wound before back-flipping and springing away from the beast. I was thanking all the gods in both my lives that I had learned some ninjutsu in the time I had, and especially that I had learned the Hien from Asuma. Wind chakra weapons are such a cheat when you're a newbie. No one expected a fresh-faced genin to be able to use them, and they are dangerous enough that they can bring down the big boys if I got a good enough shot in. Obviously demonstrated by my slaughter of the demon brothers, and my wounding and crippling of Zabuza. With his mobility drastically reduced, Zabuza was now taking a beating from Kakashi, who was unleashing a barrage of fire jutsu, shuriken and kunai attacks, and taijutsu assaults. He had cuts, contusions, and burns littering his body and blood pouring from the wounds we had inflicted upon him. Still, he was proving that he deserved his reputation, blurring through hand seals at a tremendous rate in order to unleash a, no doubt powerful, jutsu. However, Kakashi wasn't known as the copy ninja for nothing and equaled, and then surpassed the speed of his hand seals. Kakashi finished slightly before Zabuza did, but they both managed to unleash the technique. Water style, water dragon jutsu. The two water dragons went roaring at each other before colliding with the force of a raging hurricane, scattering waves, droplets of water, and debris everywhere. Both Kakashi and Zabuza were panting at this point. However, Zabuza was in distinctly worse shape with all the blood he had lost. Can you see the future? You knew what jutsu I was going to use and beat me to it. Zabuza was freaking out, obviously unused to being the one taken by surprise and intimidated by the Sharingan's impressive reputation. Yes, and your future is death. This is the end, Kakashi shouted as he blurred those hand seals at a rate eclipsing anything I had seen before. Chidori! Suddenly the air was filled with the sound of hundreds of chirping birds, all singing at once, as his hand glowed a distinct and unearthly blue. Then he vanished, moving with such speed that I momentarily lost sight of him before reappearing with his hand tearing through Zabuza's side as the demon of the mist somehow anticipated the attack and flung himself sideways. He just barely managed to prevent Kakashi's technique from piercing through his heart. There was a hole where flesh used to exist, burnt black by the electrical discharge of the A-rank assassination technique. Zabuza slowly fell to the ground and began coughing up copious amounts of blood, unable to so much as move or speak. I joined Kakashi as we made our way towards the down missing Nin, side by side, ready to finish him off. When Saban came flying out of the air to impale our enemy's neck, causing him to lose all signs of life and flop lifelessly to the ground. Kakashi and I both whipped around and fell into defensive stances as another person appeared, dressed as a Kiri Hunter Nin. I have been following him for quite some time, and you gave me a chance to kill him. You have my thanks. The masked Hunter Nin, who I knew to be Haku, picked up the body and hefted it onto his shoulder. Happy to help, Hunter-san, Kakashi drawled while maintaining his ready stance, but I could see the exhaustion creeping over his visage. I remained silent. No need to mess up a good thing with everything going mostly according to canon except Zabuza a bit more banged up and Kakashi a bit less. With a nod, the fake Hunter Nin disappeared with Zabuza over his shoulder. I immediately turned to Kakashi and yanked his Hitai down to cover his Sharingan and tossed one of his arms over my shoulders. You bought Kakashi. We had him. There was no need to use such a chakra-intensive jutsu. We could have just outlasted him and kept him busy with lower-ranked jutsu. Now you're going to be suffering from chakra exhaustion for the next few days. I berated my irresponsible sensei on his bonehead move. Although it's not as bad as it could be. At least you're still able to move and haven't passed out yet. Said Moron, chuckling weakly, cut my Kakashi bashing short. His tone was relaxed, but a hint of steely resolve lay underneath the surface. You're right, but I can't help that I want to keep my precious students safe. That shut me up. Besides, I couldn't let my student, the dead last of his age group, say he did more damage to Momochi Zabuza, the demon of the mist, than I did, now could I? He cheerily asked me as if I would agree with his reasoning. Idiotic, perverted, lazy, good-for-nothing Bakakashi. That's your reason? Moron. I muttered darkly, promising him pain in the future. Thank you, Naruto. Once again Kakashi's tone had turned serious. You had my back and covered me when I made a mistake that I could have paid for with all of our lives. You prevented that from happening, so thank you. And good job. Yeah, I guess. You're welcome, happy to help. I didn't know what to say to that. Retard Naruto was never good at receiving compliments, and that seemed to have carried over to some extent. Sasuke, Sakura, bring Tazuna and let's hurry to his house. I'm exhausted and need to rest and recover. Kakashi ordered the remainder of our team and spurred them into action, finally. Sasuke was fuming about his lack of use during the battle. Resentment and jealousy filled the air around him in a palpable cloud. Tazuna quickly took the lead, hurrying to put distance between the emo with a power fetish and himself. Even Sakura seems to realize that something bad was going on with Sasuke, and kept glancing between him and me worriedly. When we reached Tazuna's house, he hustled us inside, where we were greeted by his daughter Tsunami, a beautiful woman who epitomized the phrase Yamato Nadeshiko. She kindly welcomed us into her home, and showed me where I could leave Kakashi to rest for the night. As I lowered him to the bed, he already seemed asleep, so I turned and made to leave. He reached out and caught my arm. Thank you again, Naruto. I might not have made it if it wasn't for you. You saved my life and most likely those of everyone else in the team. Kakashi began before his serious tone gave way to a small, tired smile. But you've grown remarkably, Naruto. I know I haven't been responsible for much of it, but I really do believe that teamwork is the foundation to true strength as a team. Let Sasuke and Sakura know that they did well too. The infamous copy Nin then proceeded to pass out. Man, you really are a Bakakashi. I let out a put-upon sigh. Then I threw my lackluster sensei a bone and gave him a solid jab, hoping it would spur him on. Like I would let anything happen to my comrades if I have the power to stop it. We're all lucky that I've been able to advance so far on my own initiative. Sasuke and Sakura would have been useless against him. I ran a hand through my spiky, blonde hair in mild exasperation and disappointment. You should stop dwelling on what has already happened and train so that you can prevent something like it from happening again. You're powerful, but Zabuza had you dead to rights when he shouldn't have been able to touch you. Think on it and make your choice between the past and the present before the present becomes the past. Without looking back, I silently walked out of the room and gently closed the door behind me, not noticing the stream of tears trickling from Kakashi's single, uncovered eye as he stared unseeingly at the ceiling. Dinner was quiet and short, all of us wanting to eat and get to sleep as soon as possible. The only notable occurrence was Inari's outburst about how we were going to die and that there was no such thing as heroes as he ran to his room. I easily ignored the brat. Fun fact. Uchiha Sasuke snores really loudly and I recorded it for future use. Mwahaha, take that for robbing me of my sleep, asshole. I awoke early, around 4 in the twilight between ungodly night and unholy morning, and before anyone else was up I had set about my morning routine. Making my morning ablutions and setting about making 800 shadow clones to work on increasing my most needed abilities. 100 of them immediately took off to keep working on my wind nature chakra transformation. The next group was made of 300 to power level my lightning nature chakra transformation, which, while it was coming along, wasn't as advanced as my wind. Thankfully, both of these exercises counted as chakra control training, as I still felt I was using stupid amounts of chakra for my lower level techniques. 50 were to keep working on perfecting my Shuriken Jutsu and Bukijutsu in general. The other 50 of this group would be cranking out some Fuinjutsu, which doubled as training and gaining supplies for me to use. Another 50 swiftly began to run through my Goken Katos at near combat speed, focusing on flowing from one stance and motion into the next while maintaining control as well as power and speed. The other 50 were set to work on the speed and accuracy of my hand seals. The second to last group of 100 clones shined away to continue working on my shape transformation. If I hadn't taken so long shaping my chakra back when I attacked Zabuza with my beast-tearing palm, then I may have been able to injure him more severely. Once again, this should also help with my chakra control, thankfully. The last 100 of them were to go through my current jutsu repertoire and continue my path to mastery, as in reducing the number of hand seals and the amount of chakra I needed to actually use them. I, on the other hand, would be solely focused on the physical aspect of my training, building up my speed and strength as much as possible in the next week or so in order to better compete with Haku's speed and try to contest Zabuza's strength. I finished up pounding myself into the ground and dragged my drained carcass into the house at around 8 o'clock for breakfast. Everyone seemed surprised to see me enter from outside the house for whatever reason. "Where were you?" Sasuke demanded of me, still seething with his jealousy of the power I showed against Zabuza. "Not your business, but I was training. Next time I want to take his leg off instead of merely grazing it," I responded evenly, but with a slightly vicious undertone, knowing that it would encourage him to push himself harder. I deliberately looked at Sakura as I deliver a cruel barb. "Maybe the two of you should consider it so that you can actually provide Bakakashi and me with some help next time." I was hoping that this would encourage her to take her training more seriously and work towards actually being a real kunoichi sometime before Shippuden. If she even made it that far, which I was feeling more and more doubtful about. "You can't expect us to go against a monster like that," the banshee cried with offended sensibilities. "You're right." I freely agreed with her, cutting her response off before it could truly begin. "However, I can expect you not to freeze and be useless. Merely offering support and actually being able to keep a guard on the client while we do the actual fighting would be incredibly helpful. And Zabuza isn't a monster. Not even close. He's an A-rank missing nin, true. But A-ranks are chumps compared to the real monsters." I whipped out my bingo book and flipped it to a particular page before putting it right in her face. "This is a real monster. Uchiha Itachi, S-rank missing nin. He slaughtered his entire clan in order to merely test his power, and he killed all of them but one without even suffering an injury. Zabuza is a wannabe compared to him." I glanced at Sasuke and saw him seething, teeth gritted and intense hatred darkening his visage. "That's why you need to train as hard as you can, any chance you get. Because if you think people like Zabuza are unsurpassable mountains, then you won't be able to even lift a finger if a real monster appears before you and threatens all you hold dear." I snapped the book shut and took my place at the dead quiet table. "Besides, one day we'll have to help Sasuke-san get his revenge. As his teammates and maybe one day his friends, it will be our responsibility to make sure that he has his shot at Itachi, by taking care of anyone with him, as many times as he needs." My tone was rock solid and final, causing Sakura to blanch and swivel to look at her Sasuke-kun. Sasuke had frozen, his jealousy and hate having vanished at my words. Shock and disbelief clear in his posture and face. "After all, we are all shinobi of Konoha. We're all comrades." I looked up from my food and I smiled first at Sasuke and then at Tsunami. "The meal was delicious, thank you, Tsunami-chan." "Well said, Naruto." Kakashi called out just as Tsunami blushed and said, "Oh, thank you, Naruto-kun. Speaking of training, I'll be teaching you something new in order to try and get you ready to face off against Zabuza again." Kakashi used my sermon as a segue. "What?" Sakura returned to normal banshee form. "But Zabuza is dead, isn't he? That hunter nin finished him off." "No, I agree with Bakakashi. He used Saban, which are notoriously difficult to inflict fatal wounds with, and instead of cutting off Zabuza's head and burning the body, or even just taking the Kubikura Bocho, he took Zabuza's entire body. That means that it's likely that Zabuza is alive and recovering right now and will attack again relatively soon, but with his accomplice this time." I relayed my future knowledge as my own conclusions, garnering a respectful and appreciative nod from Kakashi. "Exactly, I would hazard to guess that Zabuza will try again within a week to 10 days regardless of his health. And while you might not think that any amount of training done within a week will let you fight Zabuza evenly, and you are entirely correct, it will help increase the chances of your survival." Kakashi cut off Sakura's counter-argument before it could even start. "Looks like I'm not the only one who wants her to grow stronger. I guess the fight with Zabuza and my words may have actually gotten through to the copy nin." Out in the forest, Kakashi faced the three of us and waited for the inevitable question. Thankfully, he didn't seem to need the crutch he used in canon, but it's also obvious that he was extremely fatigued. So what are you going to be teaching us, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked after waiting a few minutes for Kakashi to do anything. I guess I didn't fully fix him yet. I'm glad you asked, Sakura. I'm going to teach you how to climb trees. Then I smiled as the bastard waited for the standard response. But we already know how to climb trees, Sakura complained, shocked at the useless nature of Kakashi's training. Sasuke threw out his own agreement. His eyes, however, remained fixed on me as I continued reading my intermediate ceiling book. Without using your hands, Kakashi retorted in a chipper voice, obviously enjoying this. But that's impossible, Kakashi-sensei, shrieked Sakura again. Damn it, I need to break her of that, and soon. Oh? Amusement dripping from his voice, Kakashi turned and placed one foot on the trunk of a tree and proceeded to walk up it as if it were flat ground before stopping on the underside of a branch and standing upside down. So this is impossible? Well, I guess I don't need to teach it to you then. However, if you do want to learn, you concentrate your chakra to your feet and use it to stick to the surface of the tree. Too much and you'll break the bark and push yourself off, too little and you'll just slide off and fall. Kakashi really did enjoy messing with his students. 3 kunai flew through the air and landed at our feet. Use those to mark your progress, and you might want to take a running start. He proceeded to walk back down the tree and sit down with his smut. I'm done. I figured this out months ago. I drawled from my perch at the top of a tree, hanging upside down like a bat, and still reading my book. I can also do the water walking exercise too, I volunteered, just to crush any hopes he had of seeing me fall into water with my clothes on. Anime tears streaming down his face, Kakashi wailed into the air. Why, Naruto? Why do you always take the joys of being a Jonin sensei from me? Huh? Did you say something about Kakashi? I didn't even deign to look up from my book. Somewhere a man in green spandex felt a warm glow in his heart. YOSH, someone's flames of youth have exploded all over my eternal rival. It must be Naruto Kuen. Yosh. I am so proud of my student that I will do 10 million push-ups with a 10,000 kilograms boulder on my back to celebrate his youth and fan my own flames to an inferno of Yoel. Yuthu! Parroted his mini-clone. The 2 others with them simply facepalmed, as the bandits they were about to ambush were now looking at them, and knew exactly where they were. A mini rainstorm immediately settled over Kakashi's head and began pouring on him as he crouched down and began drawing squiggles in the ground with a finger. He used my thing against me. I want to be proud, but somehow I'm just devastated. Sakura. I got her attention. When you get this, and you will get it before Sasuke, said Imo, scowled at the challenge to his Uchiha superiority before I explained my reasoning. That is because you have such minuscule reserves, which makes them exceptionally easy to control. Unlike Sasuke, who has higher than average reserves for a genin. So once you have the exercise down, you'll need to keep doing it in order to begin increasing your reserves to acceptable levels. I want you to walk up and down your tree until you feel exhausted. Then sit and rest until you've recovered, then repeat until Sasuke is finished for the day. I ended with a lazy wave before jumping down from my tree, Batman style, and walking over to Kakashi. Sasuke smirked at my supposed acknowledgement of him as an elite, while Sakura paled at the thought of doing so much work. However, they both set about working on the exercise. You really aren't a good teacher, are you? I seriously asked Kakashi as I stood next to him and watched my fellow genin train. No, I really am not, he responded agreeably. I have a lightning affinity, I began, knowing that he probably knew where I was going with this. I'd like for you to teach me that jutsu you used to carve up Zabuza. Chidori, was it? He nodded in confirmation of the name, if not acceptance of teaching me the technique. I'm already well into nature transformation and shape manipulation for both my wind and lightning affinities, and I think you've already realized that I'm more advanced skill-wise and more mature mentally than the rest of my age group. So please teach me how to use that technique. I bowed my head in supplication and began to plan what I might have to do to convince him. Okay, came the simple reply, causing me to fall over in surprise at how easily he accepted. Why? I wanted to confirm why he's going to teach me an A-rank assassination jutsu as a genin, without any convincing. As you said, you're already much more advanced than them, he lazily gestured at the other 2 who were struggling to tree climb, in a variety of ways. He fixed his heavy-lidded gaze on me and I felt a shiver go down my spine. And besides, you're the only one here besides me that has a chance of lasting more than a few seconds against Zabuza. That and you more than likely saved my life in that fight, holding you back when I could help you would be self-defeating. A cheery eye smile accompanied his next revelations. We both know that you're far above most chunin at this point anyway. I'd have to see what else you can do, but from what I've seen you could be approaching Tokubetsu to newly promoted Jonin levels soon if you can use more than one elemental nature type. Actually, I didn't know that. I knew that my taijutsu was definitely getting up there, that I had a decent assortment of wind jutsu and a small repertoire of lightning jutsu, and that my basics were rock solid. However, I didn't really know how that all fit together, and where that left me in regards to rank and overall strength. Wow, the Kage Bunishin no Jutsu training method added to Uzumaki stamina and persistence, crazy, and the healing from being the Kyubi Jinchuriki really was super HAX. While I was lost in thought, also known as my inner monologue, I felt a spike of bloodlust and managed to dodge a kunai aimed at my head on pure instinct. However, the next instant I felt cold steel at my throat as a voice purred in my ear. You're getting sloppy, Blondie-kun. At least you managed to avoid my kunai, but sadly that means I'll have to cut you to taste that blood of yours that I like so much. Staying perfectly still in order to not cut my own throat, I merely sighed. I feel like I've been sighing a lot recently, and greeted my assailant. Enko-chan, it's great to see you again. I'm so happy that the Hokage sent you as our backup. My monotone may have put lie to my statement though, as I could almost feel her pouting. Aw, you're no fun, Blondie-kun. Not even a flinch. But I still have you this time. My psychotic sometimes sensei, friend, crowed in triumph. Do you? I proceeded to have a troop of clones surround her with kunai at her vitals. That one you have is a clone too, so I guess that means you lose this one too, Enko-chan. I waved from my new position by Kakashi's other side where I had ended up after substituting with the clone in front of her. So many Blondie-kuns. Are they all for me? Enko's smile was predatory and extremely seductive. She leaned forward just enough to squish her against my clone's back and began to rub herself against it all while giving the real me bedroom eyes. I guess your clone gets to be the one to touch me then. Her tongue traced shapes on the skin of my clone's neck and eventually found his ear. That, along with the stimulation of her pushing and rubbing against his back and the dainty hand that reached around and fondled his manhood, had him a blushing, erect, and very happy mess. While my clone struggled not to moan in pleasure and desire, Enko continued speaking as if she wasn't even trying to give my clone a stiffy, or the OTPHJ, over the pants hand job, of his short life. I came to the land of the waves because I wanted to spend some quality time with my Blondie-kun, and all I got was this stupid clone. Besides, she paused and sped up her hand. I thought I told you to call me Ankone? My clone burst. Not in that way, you pervert. Okay, almost in that way. But I was talking about how Enko drove her kunai through his neck just as he was about to finish. Talk about ultimate blue balls, and his memories transferred directly to me. Ugh. Every other clone around doubled over as they sprouted sudden erections and were unexpectedly assaulted with massive blue balls and memories of death before release. I was no exception, and found myself on the ground clutching my junk as it throbbed angrily. Thankfully, an appalled Sakura and a slightly curious Sasuke distracted Enko at that moment. Who are you and what the hell were you just doing to Naruto? The human siren screeched out in righteous fury and embarrassment. Sasuke just nodded as if including himself in her questions. Me? Enko seemed genuinely shocked that they didn't know who she was. I'm not only Blondie-kun's very own Neisan. I am the extremely sexy and currently single Mitarashi Enko. She struck a pose, hands on her hips and chest thrust out as if expecting praise and applause. Until Blondie-kun gets a bit older and decides that he'd like to learn about the snake in the cave. Then I'll be the extremely sexy and unfortunately for all things male and female, I don't discriminate, taken Mitarashi Enko. At this she started to run her hands over her body and wiggle a little bit as she licked her lips, causing each of my clones to flinch and grab his manhood in phantom pain and true arousal. Until he proposes, and then I suppose I'd be the devastatingly sexy and happily married, but unfortunately no longer available to fuck like a dirty slut, Uzumaki Enko. Oh. But I'll be boinking Blondie-kun however he likes. Everyone's sweat dropped at this, not knowing what to say in response. I gave a long-suffering sigh again as my clones all popped, and my pants grew even tighter. You're a bit late. I tried to get the conversation back on less perilous subjects. I'll let one of my clones fill you in. Kakashi-sensei was about to teach me a new jutsu, so I'll talk to you later, Enko-chan. I motioned for Kakashi to join me as I created a new clone and began to waddle away, as my pants were uncomfortably tight around my junk and restricted my movement. Now, as an aside, in my old, non-ninja life, fanfiction authors like to joke that Hinata liked and stalked Naruto because he was hung. I wouldn't be surprised if that was her reason. I could club a baby seal to death with this thing and I'm, like, 12. Seriously. Oh, do you mind watching over those two while they train? They're doing tree climbing. Maybe you can provide some incentive for them to work harder? I offered to the crazy, sexy, snake lady over my shoulder. Oh, Blondie-kun, this is why I love you. You give me the best presents. She cheered before turning to my teammates with a homicidal grin. You better start working harder and moving faster, or else you'll have to learn how to do this with only one leg. The kunai and shuriken began to fly and screams rang through the air as Kakashi and I walked away. You are a wonderful student. Kakashi gave me a thumbs up as proud tears streamed from his visible eye. That night while we were eating dinner, Enko was hanging off my side blabbing away happily about something or another. Kakashi was busy reading his smut, and my teammates were nursing fresh bruises and cuts as they shoveled food into their mouths like they were starving to death, before both of their heads thunk down on the table. I was reading my sealing book, enjoying the feeling of Enko's leg pressing and rubbing against mine, subtly focusing on how her felt when pushed up against my arm and shoulder, and lazily preventing her from either assailing my teammates with various weapons or sneaking her hand into my pants. I was only 12 after all, and as much as I knew I would enjoy whatever she did to me, it was not to be done in front of others. If we were alone, I would probably, definitely, just let her do whatever she wanted and try to enjoy it as much as possible and record it. I would definitely record it. Unfortunately, I knew this atmosphere wouldn't last, and as I thought, it didn't. You're all going to die, came a high-pitched and petulant voice. You say something, Pipsqueak? I asked in my best Kakashi voice as Kakashi himself clenched his fist in victory at having passed on his thing to the next generation. I said that you're all going to die. He screamed at me. You can't beat Gato, no one can. So you're all going to die. You aren't heroes, they don't exist. I mildly closed my book with one hand, while with the other I soothingly took Enko's hand away from the sharp object she was about to launch and drew little patterns on the back of her hand and knuckles. Kakashi was in shock as Enko practically melted against his student due to him rubbing her hand. Enko! The crazy, murderous, psychopathic, slutty, reprehensible, snake bitch of Konoha. The woman who assaulted, slept around, and violently hurt people for amusement. That Enko! And now she sported a soft blush, was nuzzling his cute, little student's cheek, running her tongue over his neck, and had little pink hearts wafting off of her as she purred in contentment, while giving him the "you're getting lucky tonight" look. What the hell did Naruto do to her? Where he could get him some, and did it work on other women too? I cleared my throat while I carefully crafted my response and thought about how much I wanted to dig at Inari. So in reverse order. You're right that we aren't heroes. We're shinobi, we kill heroes and villains and everything in between. You're wrong that heroes don't exist though. Heroes are those who stand up for their beliefs and loved ones no matter the cost, and they most certainly do exist. Regarding Gato, he's just a funny, little man with lots of money. As soon as we defeat Zabuza, the ninja that Gato hired, for the second time I might add, we will be able to kill Gato at any time we want. As for us dying, I shrugged at this point. It's possible, but that's the life we signed up for when we became shinobi. However, at least we'll go out fighting for what we believe in and with friends at our side and not sitting at home whining about how hard our lives are and wishing failure and death on the family that only wants what is best for us. You see, little boy, we are what stands between your grandfather, mother, village, country, and yourself and Gato. So if we die, all of you will as well. I softly brought Enko's hand up to my masked lips and planted a soft, short kiss on her palm that had her melting down into a puddle on the floor. I'll be taking my leave now. I'll be outside training to work off some steam. Thank you for the wonderful meal, Tsunami-chan. With that, I left and prepared to train through the night and meet Haku in the morning. I hummed to myself as I sat in quiet contemplation, looking over what was left of my training ground. There were trees that were shattered, gouged, and riddled with holes going all the way through them. The ground had suffered from much the same, only with the addition of giant craters smashed into its surface. I still had shadow clones scattered about practicing and scouting for my soon-to-arrive guest as I sat and rested. My personal training had once again been purely physical, and I had finally succeeded in moving my weights up to over 8,000 pounds, which was my base goal for the Chunin exams. All in all, I felt like I had done very well for a night of training, even if the edges of my vision still went blurry when I tried to turn while using Chidori. Suddenly a rush of memories let me know that Haku was on her way towards me. I speedily swapped places with a clone that I had pretend to be asleep like in the original timeline. She then approached me and pulled the whole "I'm going to choke him to death" thing. Kind of funny really, as this time around I was stronger than him, her, and could kill him, her, before she, even realized. As her, hand was about to reach my clone's neck, the clone acted and quickly subdued him, her. Okay, so I will be the first to admit that I can be kind of oblivious, and that dumbass Naruto was so much worse than me, but Haku was confusing the fuck out of me. Was Haku a he or a she? She, dressed and looked like a girl, but claimed to be a boy. Not to mention that Haku was fucking hot. This would really mess with my head if Haku turned out to be a guy. Would that mean I was gay? Could I be gay if I was only attracted to Haku but not other men, and only then because he, or hopefully she, was super hot in an extremely feminine way? Boss. My clone looked at me seriously as I almost lost myself to a severe crisis with my sexuality. I'd have to see Anko later to reaffirm that I was very much interested in the feminine physique. Well, I suppose I could use Tsunami-chan for that as well. Sakura wouldn't work, as she was a flapjack. I caught this person attempting to strangle me in my sleep. My clone once again dragged me out of my thoughts. No! Haku protested feebly, being held in a very uncomfortable submission hold. I was just going to wake you up and see why you were sleeping out here. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. Alright. I agreed good-naturedly and dispelled my clone, letting Haku sit up as a sly grin stole across my face for a moment before it was gone. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, and sorry for the misunderstanding. I didn't mean to hurt or scare you. I offered Haku a brilliant grin and a hand up even as I lied about my intentions. I had totally meant to scare him, her. Smiling gently in turn as she, rubbed feeling back into her limbs, Haku took my hand and I hoisted him. I'll go with him for now as it's much less fucking annoying than questioning his gender every pronoun, to his feet. Then I began brushing the dirt and grass off his kimono, pink for God's sake. He could at least wear orange, while apologizing for getting him dirty. Thank you, Naruto-kun. The questionably gendered beauty beamed at me. My name is Haku, and I'm sorry again for startling you earlier. So what were you doing out here anyway? Haku probed for information while keeping up the pretense of not being a ninja. Oh, I was training. I've got a mission to complete, and not only my own, but my client's precious people to protect. I channeled dumbass Naruto as best as I could and flashed him another grin, now thoroughly satisfied with my findings and the potential for teasing later on that they offered. So you fight for your precious people? Haku seemed startled and yet happy about my words even as I nodded in affirmation. I too fight for my precious people. My precious person is also why I'm out here collecting medicinal herbs. He raised his basket slightly. Yep, but I also fight for myself. I interjected while nodding firmly. Protecting others is what makes someone become truly strong, but only when someone can incorporate their self into their list of precious people can they truly begin to live. After all, if someone is precious to you, it is more than likely that you are precious to them too. That means to protect them you need to protect yourself. My sagacious words caused him to pause and look down in thought as if his entire world was rocked by my words. Score. Plan. Don't have Haku stabbed through the heart with a Raikiri to futilely try to protect Zabuza is a Gyo. So the name needs work, Sumi. Naruto named his ultimate technique Wind Shuriken, which is lame as fuck even if I will keep the name for simplicity's sake. Hey, don't look so pensive, it doesn't fit a pretty girl like you. I once again channeled retard Naruto and offered him a thumbs up while trying not to cackle with glee at my upcoming prank. That got a smile and a laugh out of Haku as he prepared to drop his bomb on me. Thank you, Naruto-kun, for your kind words, but I'm a boy. I just looked at him. Then I intensified my gaze into a stare, as if trying to divine the truth of his words. Haku blushed and began to fidget under the force of my scrutiny. I offered as my noncommittal answer. When in doubt, or pretending to be in doubt, go with the Uchiha response. By Haku-chan, I've got to go meet up with my friends and train some more. I yelled as I jogged away from him, pretending to disregard his earth-shattering revelation. Goodbye, Naruto-kun, till we meet again. Haku called in response, looking slightly sad. Probably because he knows that we will be fighting each other soon, and maybe because I didn't react much to his shocker of being a man. Oh. I stopped as if suddenly remembering something important, and turned back to Haku with a grin. Say hi to Zabuza-san for me and let him know that Gato plans to double-cross him. I returned fire with my own drone strike in retaliation. Haku's stupefied face was worth acting like retard Naruto to throw him off the fact that I was actually a good ninja and even knew who he was. And besides that, I was gearing up to drop a nuke on the bitch. Boys don't have such developed curves, or Haku-chan. I gave Haku a lascivious wink and mimicked patting her down before quickly taking off. That's right, Haku is a girl. That always fucked with me when I watched the show, as the way she looked and dressed screamed feminine, but she claimed to be a guy. And seeing her in person was even worse, as she was just so damn pretty, yet claimed to be a boy. Welp, that was one mystery of this universe solved. I guess she's just a troll that gets her kicks off of messing with guys. Or maybe it was just less hassle to pretend to be a dude in the ninja line of work? I have added another pair of awesome kunoichi to my groping collection. Get it? Not growing, groping? No one but Enko appreciates me as much as I deserve. That statement makes me concerned for my mental health. Oh well. Somewhere in Konoha, Kurenai developed a tick mark on her head and swore that she would punish Kakashi. She didn't know why she would do this, but she knew that he would deserve it. Not to mention she felt the sudden urge to meet up with Enko and meet the blondie-kun she had been raving about. Kurenai swore to steer this blondie-kun away from the path of the pervert, no matter the cost. Little did she know that it was far too late for that. Whistling a jaunty tune to myself, I decided to check up on my teammates and make sure that Enko hadn't killed anyone important while I was off solving the mysteries of the world. As I strolled towards the hideous screams and desperate pleading that echoed throughout the forest, I couldn't help but hope that Zabuza took my warning seriously. Not just because Haku was a pretty girl with a nice rack and decent curves, even if they were wrapped up and hidden so she could pass as a boy, but because of how much he would help the Bloodline Rebellion if he made it out of this alive. Not that any of that would stop me from keeping the wave safe from Gato, even if I had to kill both of them. After all, I was a leaf shinobi, and there were plenty of other beautiful women in the world. Like Enko and her crazy, sexy, insane, voluptuous, psychotic self. Did I mention that she was hot and crazy? While I mused on the fates of enemy ninja and the ratio of attractiveness to batshit crazy in women that I found acceptable, I absently caught a kunai that flew in my direction and used it to deflect the rest that followed after it. I looked up blankly as if I hadn't been paying any attention at all to my surroundings and had only just noticed the presence of my friend. Oh. Hey there, Enko-chan, didn't see you there. I was thinking about something. The purple-haired beauty gave me a psychopathic smile that both aroused me and made me want to run away from her. Blondie-kun. Your friends aren't any fun, they aren't even as good of toys as you were when we first met. Well, Enko-chan, that'd be because of all the awesome I have. I gave a sympathetic shake of my head and shrugged my shoulders. It's not their fault that they weren't born with as much awesome as I was. Twin torpedoes impacting my face and pressing me up against a tree as a kunai poking me in the thigh right by my femoral artery abruptly cut me off. Ha! I have you now, Blondie-kun! The torpedoes crowed in triumph as they rubbed against my face through a thin mesh barrier, letting me feel their hardened tips perfectly. And what were you thinking about that had you so distracted? Was it me? It was definitely about the sexy and single Mitarashi Enko, wasn't it? Nope, you still came too soon, Enko-chan. However, I don't mind. Only guys have to worry about when they come. You can come for me whenever you want. Over and over again. I murmured into her ear as I nuzzled her neck and pushed up behind her before my clone popped. I brazenly ran a hand up her thigh before blatantly groping her as I pushed her up against the tree she had held my clone against. But you're right, I was thinking about how attractive I found you and if it was because of or despite your crazy. She moaned happily and arched her back to push her incredibly firm, heart-shaped derriere into my crotch, eagerly grinding it against me, and to press the swell of her heavy, round, further into my palm so that more of her flesh was caught in my grip. I can't help it, Blondie-kun. Crazy is just who I am, and you know it's because of my crazy that you like me so much. We complement each other's crazy perfectly. Enko whined, as her movements grew increasingly needy and frantic, eliciting a groan from me. That we're both so crazy makes me want to come for you so bad that I just can't help myself. I've never wanted something this much before. I've been with a bunch of guys and none have ever made me feel it so much. I want to mount you and feel you writhe beneath me until you're gasping for air and begging for me to end it. I want to watch your face as it all comes gushing out. Enko was moaning by this point as her voice went throaty and full of promise. Her hips were glued to mine as she rolled them lustfully, prompting me to unconsciously rock in time with her rhythm. As she picked up her pace, one of her hands reached between her legs and gently cupped my balls through my pants, and the other wound through my hair as she gently ran her nails over my scalp. Enko-chan. I moaned into her neck as I clung to her to keep myself upright, as her scent and the feel of her rubbing against me had me going weak in the knees. I couldn't help but breath in her scent again and again. She smelled like the sweetness of dango, the sharp bite of steel and oil, and the faintest whiff of salty blood, all wrapped up in the overwhelming musk of sex and arousal. She had me right on the edge and we both knew it. However, I knew I would burst soon, but maybe not in the way she hoped that I would. Call me Enkone, Blondie-kun, and I'll make it spurt out of you until you pass out. I'll even lick it all up. She punctuated that offer by speeding up the rocking of her hips and giving my balls a squeeze as she pressed my face into her neck, seeming to know how much I enjoyed her scent. Don't you want to spurt all that stuff inside you all over me? I lost it right then. Yes. Anko-chan. I want to. I am going to dash. Both of our breathing was ragged, and in that moment when I lost myself, Anko took advantage in order to spin us around so that my back was against the tree and we were face to face.